Part 24. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 239. Chapter 233, Battle of the Square. Walking along the forest path, Luo Guang and his companions met several patrolling villagers. Only this one doesn't have a baneling in order to find the most efficient way to kill the enemy. Luo Guang and Leon conducted several tests on the villagers they met on the road. Among the 5 villagers who were shot in the head, only the one at Luo Guang's feet did not have a baneling, and this enemy was the only one Luo Guang shot. Luo Guang dissected the body and found that there were still parasites inside, but they had lost their vitality. Obviously, Luo Guang and his companions did not shoot at the enemy's torso. Luo Guang stabbed the parasite, and after confirming that it was not pretending to be dead, he said to Leon, "Compared with the previous ones, this parasite is much smaller." "You mean this parasite is not fully developed, so there is no explosion?" Luo Guang wiped the knife on the villager's clothes and put it back to his waist. "Yes, it is probably that the parasite that has not fully developed cannot survive without the host, and can only live and die with the host. But figuring this out will not help us in our current environment." Leon was a little disappointed. "But at least we have confirmed that the longest tentacles grown by those parasites are only about 3 meters, which is very helpful for us to survive." Before the small door retreated, there was a main road leading to the central square of the village, and various houses were built around the square. Wu Fei didn't want to say madfuck anymore. It must be to save energy. "I have already generated electricity and roasted the parasite with electricity. Our speed is comparable to that of professional athletes." Seeing a group of uncles and aunts in their 70s and 80s chasing him ferociously made Luo Guang feel more horrified than zombies chasing him. Of course, Luo Guang still had no chance of winning if he really had to fight for his life, but I wanted to try the feeling of the parasite retreating into my body. It was too disgusting. With a clang, Luo Guang, who was going down the stairs, heard the sound of the window on the 7th floor. The first head of the Salazar family was leading his soldiers to fight for the development of the family's territory at that time. With one shot and one head, Luo Guang knocked down the villagers near the window. While the knocked down villagers blocked the route for others to climb over the window, I immediately moved them. Luo Guang looked outside and immediately gestured to himself. Luo Guang did not stop his steps because of this, and continued to go downstairs. The distance between the houses was very close, and Wu Fei could move to another building with one jump. Although these villagers were very slow, I believed that they could parkour. Luo Guang had sharp eyes. I saw that there were no villagers walking around in the square. They were holding wood in their hands and stacking it in the middle. 2 racks were erected outside the wood, and it looked like 2 people were tied underneath. The first Salazar successfully suppressed the X-cult and built a castle there. He ordered the ancestors of the Salazar family to suppress the parasites called Devil's Son that I sealed there for generations. When we came to the roof of the next house, although it was only a brick-tiled roof, it still successfully withstood the weight of Luo Guang, who jumped over. Luo Guang threw away the empty magazine outside the pistol and replaced it with a new one. The 2 of them slowly confirmed the terrain and situation. Just as they were about to leave the main road and hide to one side, they were bumped into by a stepmother who came out of the alley. And in terms of the situation behind, Luo Guang was not the most suitable previous host. Luo Guang took the time to look back to confirm whether the enemy followed him, but found that all these villagers were like sprinters, swinging their hands slowly and running towards him. The 2 of them sneaked away. The whole village was much smaller than Luo had imagined, and it had not yet taken shape. Passing by the door of a room on the 7th floor, I heard a bang. The door was directly knocked open by the villagers and hit Wu Fei. The house I retreated into was not surrounded by villagers. When I saw Wu Fei coming out, no villager threw an axe at Luo Guang. The villagers outside were naturally the most unfamiliar with that area. Therefore, before Luo Guang broke the window glass and retreated to the 1st floor, The villagers who were chasing Luo Guang immediately gathered together, ready to surround Luo Guang and catch him in a jar. But Luo Guang said directly to the outside, "He left first, you come to cut off the front." And Ramon Salazar's purpose was to obtain weak power and cure his dwarfism. Speaking of the Salazar family, we finished and they were the lords of that village area, and their family castle was also here. There was another loud noise in front of him, and Luo Guang immediately distanced himself. It was the villagers who were headshot by Luo Guang on the first floor. In order to protect the host, or to be more precise, they cannot use the host's body for a long time. These parasites will also use more power than they can bear in special circumstances. What the hell? That left Yan and Luo Guang no room to deal with the enemy. There was no specific zoning construction plan, and all buildings were built around the center of the square. Because the number of people in that village was at least less than 1,000, it was in sharp contrast to the situation in the game where there were no houses but a bunch of monsters. Anyway, the villagers sent out for reconnaissance knew that there were only 2 invaders, so Luo Guang and we didn't think it was a big deal, and we were not prepared for a small battle with the villagers. The 4 villagers with explosive insects in front also provided useful information to Luo Guang and the others. It just so happened that there was no staircase on the other side of Luo Guang, and Luo Guang, who was running, suddenly lost his balance. The stair railings could not stop him at all, and Luo Guang was directly hit by the villager on the stairs. Wu Fei jumped up with her weak waist strength, raised her gun and shot at the villagers who were still trying to retreat. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Yan pushed hard and a gap appeared in the double door, the door is locked. Luo Guang shot at the explosive insect enemy that jumped into the air and could not change direction, and solved the first enemy that jumped over. When I came there and found the cult and parasites in the village, my first reaction was not to take the parasite that could not control humans for myself, but to lead my knights to charge the cult. The 2 did not stay here for too long. After confirming the matter, they continued to set off. It may be a certain religion, right? Especially those remote villages are the hotbeds for the development of evil sections, Luo Guang answered Yan casually. It was just that the 4th generation head of the family, Ramon Salazar, who was born without dwarfism, was bewitched by this investor, killed his father and seized the position of head of the family, and then fully supported the sect established by the investor, the Dark Cult. Everything went in a bad direction until the 1st generation head of the family found that this investor seemed to come for money, but for the secrets that his family had always guarded. Because of Luo Guang's shot, Luo Guang was considered less threatening by the villagers, so we who lost our command chose to run to Luo Guang less. Taking advantage of the enemy's jump to chase us again, Luo Guang shot and first solved the parasite that left the host, and then I tried to aim at another one again. That time Luo Guang finally succeeded in passing through the window on the 7th floor and reaching the roof. But the same move was useful for Luo Guang. Luo Guang did not pull the trigger and shoot immediately after aiming, but chose to shoot before the parasite jumped 7 times. Then Yan looked through the gap to see the situation outside. The investment is small and the scale is small, but it brings employment opportunities to the village and attracts more people. Luo Guang knew whether it was just a normal communication between parasites or just a coincidence, which produced the effect of teamwork. Finally, they arrived at the gate of the square of this remote village. One shot hit. The parasite tentacles that Luo Guang solved with one shot drooped up powerfully, and then fell from midair to the street, and that period of time was not enough for other explosive zombies to jump over and surround Luo Guang. What is the badge under this door? These villagers with explosive insects have increased their speed and strength, and the values of the 2 attributes of strength and flexibility have not reached the edge of human limits. Luo Guang, who was squatting on the ground and had not yet stood up, immediately lay forward and kicked the villagers who rushed over with a move of rabbit kicking eagle, smashing a locker outside the room. At the same time, Luo Guang, who was lying under the stairs, pulled the trigger with his left hand and attacked the villagers who retreated to the first floor. Luo Guang's right hand flashed with lightning, and he followed the tentacles and directly electrocuted the parasite that had separated from the host and was about to parasitize him. But no matter what, the pressure these villagers put on him was less than before. The main problem was that he could kill an enemy with one shot, and his overall combat power was not weak enough. It was also very troublesome to avoid and deal with the 8 tentacles of the parasite. But on the contrary, if the host's cerebellum was destroyed, the parasite would replace the host's cerebellum to control the body, but that was not a long-term solution, so in order to find the previous host, the parasite would use the power that the human body could bear to the limit and control the body to capture the previous host that was suitable. After the curse was uttered, Luo Guang's hands did not stop moving. He ignored the thrown farm tools that hit him and aimed his pistol at the villagers who jumped over. In terms of the lowest speed, these villagers would chase Wu Fei at all costs, but if the villagers lost Wu Fei, they would not likely go to trouble Huayan, so Wu Fei did not run too slowly, and followed these villagers to the left area of the village. Wu Fei naturally knew her disadvantages, but for me, retreating into the house to fight would not increase the number of enemies I faced at the same time, and would not play a role in dividing the enemy. Before Luo Guang rolled to the ground, the villager closest to Luo Guang was also afraid of the glass under the window, so he followed Luo Guang and flew over the window to retreat. But Wu Fei knew from the other party's posture that this guy was commanding other villagers to intercept Wei Ang, so I chose to capture the thief first and send him to the west directly. None of the locals in that place were enemies of Wu Fei and Wei Ang, so even if Luo Guang and Wei Ang solved the stepmother in the first place, they would be discovered by the villagers sooner or later, and then they would launch a retreat attack on themselves and others. Luo Guang didn't shoot the parasite that popped up, because the villagers' flying axes or sickles and other farm tools were all thrown at him, so I chose to run to the alley on the left immediately to lead the villagers away. Although the village was located in a remote place, it successfully attracted investment with the efforts of the first generation of the Salazar family head, and built a quarry and a factory respectively. Luo Guang was not injured, and quickly grasped the situation, turned his head to avoid the first tentacle that attacked, and then shot to break the 7th tentacle. The first tentacle was directly grasped by Wu Fei with her right hand. I found the enemy, did not expose myself, lurked and retreated, and the gesture of Huayan told Luo Guang enough information. Huayan was not firm, nor did he question why Luo Guang chose to act together. I only said a big heart to Luo Guang and immediately ran to the main road on the right. But it was not the parasite that gave the host power, but the parasite that lifted the host's restrictions on his body, allowing the host to perform actions beyond the body's ability to bear. Is your luck so bad? Luo Guang cursed angrily after all the enemies he had defeated so far had been exploded. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. The flying axe flew very accurately towards Luo Guang's waist, but the flying speed of the axe was too fast for Wu Fei. I even grabbed the flying axe handle with my right hand while dodging the axe. The attack of this parasite not only stopped Luo Guang from approaching, but also provided cover for the other villagers who jumped over. When aiming at the 7th one and shooting, the parasite of the exploded villager directly used the corpse of the villager above to borrow power and made a 7-step jump in the air, successfully avoiding Wu Fei's 7th bullet. That area is at least 7 times smaller than the village square in the Resident Evil 4 game. Although Luo Guang understood what those people said, there was no information about that language outside the system, and he only analyzed that it was a variant of Spanish. The story started from the end of the Middle Ages. After the Middle Ages, a cult of insect worship appeared in the village. That cult used an ancient parasite to control believers and let them satisfy the leader's selfish desires. There was a sound from the right front side. It was a villager holding a wooden ladder and putting it on the eaves. A villager was slowly climbing down. The villagers naturally saw Huayan running to the other side. One of the villagers who looked older raised his hand and pointed to the street on the left. As soon as he opened his mouth, he was hit by Luo Guang's bullet. And this explosive insect villager repeated the subsequent operation, using the host's corpse to take advantage of the 7-stage jump in the air. This villager was the one who later commanded the other villagers to surround Yan and was shot in the head by Luo Guang. Luo Guang saw the distance and jumped to the roof of the next door. At the same time, the axe in his hand flew out and chopped the head of the villager who climbed down. This area is a special residential area. The lowest building is more than 2 stories low and is made of cement and stone bricks. Luo Guang took a look and slowly calculated the number of these explosive insect villagers. It was exactly the same as the one he shot. The villagers, plus those who were deceived by the dark cult leader Osman Sadler to work, were all implanted with parasites by Sadler. After dealing with the explosive insect villagers under him, Wu Fei immediately pushed them away with his right hand, then quickly got up and went downstairs again. Fortunately, the village square was not an important place for Sadler, so there were no less than 1,000 villagers who were performing sacrificial activities and busy around in the square at this time. With a snap, the head of the villager who was shot in the head by Wu Fei was directly replaced by the parasite, and the 8 tentacles danced in the air, directly knocking a villager next to him away. Jumping forward, avoiding the stab of the 8 bone blade tentacles of the parasite, Luo Guang turned around and continued to jump to the top of the other houses. Meow, I'm broken, dot. I'm sorry. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 240. Chapter 234 Leon, the fire you set angered them. Facing the enemy's siege, Luo Guang suddenly had an idea and raised his fist to smash the brick roof under his feet. It was broken with one blow. Luo Guang opened a hole under his feet and fell down with the help of gravity, avoiding the tentacles attacking from all directions. In the blink of an eye, the villagers with explosive insects found that their target of attack had disappeared. Instead, the villagers with explosive insects did not pay attention to the friendly forces, causing the tentacles to touch and mix together, and even the bone blades on the tentacles directly cut off the tentacles of the friendly forces. Luo Guang did not pay attention to the possible love and hate between the villagers above, and directly broke through the wall of the 2nd floor and returned to the street. Google searched Can. Then he fought and retreated, shooting the villagers who looked very normal one by one. After seeing the situation of those villagers with explosive insects, Luo Guang no longer wanted to complain that these villagers were still 100% explosive insects. He planned to try whether the flash bomb would be as useful in this world as in the game. Luo Guang found that there seemed to be quite a few types of parasites, and the most common ones were those with 3 tentacles. The second type was without tentacles, but the whole parasite would become like a worm, with a normal neck as wide as 2 meters long, and a mouthpart composed of sharp teeth and serrated teeth at the front end. There was another type where the parasite replaced the head, and the appearance still looked like a human head, but the facial features were fake, and it would split into 4 petals and open its bloody mouth to bite the captured enemy. Thinking of that, I looked in the direction of Luo Guang. The gunfire here was less sparse than my own, so I decided to go over and help Luo Guang. However, that self-righteous villager seemed to have forgotten one thing, that my intelligence had not been improved before I was parasitized, and it even decreased instead of improving. But since I asked Luo Guang to be the captain of that mission, and the situation just now seemed very urgent, I did not argue and obeyed the order directly, but I would give Luo Guang some advice before that. On the other side, the flash bomb thrown by Luo Guang gave Wu Jia bad news and a good news. Luo Guang comforted, at least we are not dead yet, we just need to continue to suffer. After confirming whether the enemy had come downstairs again, Yan took out the disinfectant spray from his waist bag and sprayed the liquid on his body with disinfectant. Yan broke into a house. I thought it was a house, but I looked closely and found that it was a bar. It's just that there is no limit to the materials and technology, So basically one household has one room, and there are no apartment buildings, making the residential area of the entire village very small. The chickens were frightened by the sudden landing of Wyan and chirped. Wyan didn't pick up eggs like in the game, which would restore Wyan's health. It would only break the eggs and dirty his clothes in a calm movement. Wyan saw the situation and immediately understood that the enemy was using fire attack, and the arsonist would probably ambush him at the exit. There is time to give Wyan the shotgun on his back. The pistol is my best choice at this time. I found the escape route very slowly. While there were no villagers gathered in the bar, I opened the window with the shotgun on my back and climbed over the tiled roof of the next room. Then I slid down from the roof of the first floor to the street in front of the bar, disturbing a chicken shed on the roadside. Wyan nodded seriously. Although I hated these two lazy guys, it was 2 lives after all. After waiting for a few seconds, before the bartender made any movement, I took the shotgun hanging under the wall and checked it slowly. I felt that this method was a great way to kill 7 birds with 1 stone. The reason why Luo Guang showed an ugly expression was because I found that I had used more than half of the pistol magazines under my tactical belt in the big battle just now. I didn't have the habit of changing magazines by myself. I would take one here and one here to get new magazines. Instead, I took the magazines from the right along the belt to the left, so that Luo Guang could vaguely know the number of magazines I had left and the number of bullets I had not used. Before Wyan fired, he immediately climbed over the bar and ran to the stairs on one side. And I saw a Remington M870 shotgun under the wall in front of the bartender at the bar. The bartender was kicked down by Wyan, and his neck hit the corner of the table and broke his neck. The good news is that the effective killing range of that thing is much larger than in the game, and it is effective for this kind of explosive insect villagers with replaced heads, no tentacles or turned into worms. Wyan's decisive operation of knocking on the door successfully saved my life, but the crisis has not been resolved. The bartender was stunned for 2 seconds, and finally reacted, and immediately turned around to get the shotgun under the wall. The only bars and markets in the village were divided and surrounded by these houses. The muzzle of the shotgun in his hand was slowly stuffed out of the mouth of the worm-type parasite, and when the adrenaline surged, Wyan steadily pulled the trigger. We didn't have a walkie-talkie, but we communicated through it during that meeting, because we knew each other and whether we needed to keep quiet and avoid the villagers. So Luo Guang and Weiang didn't think of looking for teammates at a low point. Weiang ran very slowly, so he only heard the sound of the explosive insects and didn't see the situation of the explosive insects with his own eyes. On my side, facing just a few enemies made me feel very difficult. Bang bang, 2 shots made the village woman understand the famous saying of being shot in the knee. The village woman fell to the ground instantly, and the dung fork fell out of her hand and fell a few meters behind Weiang. So Wyan, who understood what the other party said, decided to make the other party the first target of his shotgun. This chapter is not over yet, please click the next page to continue reading. 1 is to use fire attack to eliminate the invaders on the 7th floor, and at the same time, he also used the shotgun to face this horror. Don't even think about it, Wyan jumped over the bar and kicked it. A total of 19 bullets, too many, Wyan muttered in his heart. It's these 2 people. Those 2 people naturally did not refer to the police who took Luo Guang and us out of the village. The worm-type parasite turned around and rushed out of the room very slowly. The muscles under the parasite were tense, and the front end exerted force, jumping up and biting Wyan. Luo Guang's first reaction when he saw that situation was not Wyan. I actually set fire to the village, thinking that Wyan was too cruel, and there was a forest around. The worm-type parasite in the air was directly shot away by Wyan's gun. Wyan breathed slowly and his heart beat slowly. Unfortunately, after searching the entire bar, Wyan only found a box of shotgun bullets, and judging from the packaging, it seemed that they had not been out of the factory for a long time. The most obvious thing was that the enemy had taken a lot longer to catch up with Luo Guang. So I did not expect that it would be difficult to set a fire and put it out, and the surrounding buildings were very sparse, and they were all made of wood and stone. The fire was very likely to burn down the entire village. The wooden and stone houses burned very slowly, and the thick smoke floated down through the wooden boards of the interlayer. The knee is one of the smallest strong points under the human body, Wyan muttered to himself, and before stopping the village woman from charging, I shot again to end the enemy. Barasanan, one of the villagers, was so cowardly that he dared to point his finger at Wyan and curse. At this time, without Luogwang's slow cleaning of the enemies, Wyan finally felt the pressure of the villagers' running speed. The villager chose to set the fire directly, and then I squatted inside. The reason why we all came to the square in sync was because there was a half-damaged watchtower at the lowest point of the village square next to the square. I had some time to recover my mood. After that, the villager who was hit by the shotgun did not go downstairs, nor did he run to call for support. Although the village was managed by the dark cult, the villagers seemed to have their own housing. The commotion inside did not alarm the bartender, so the bartender was stunned for a moment when he saw the uninvited guest. Wyan, retreat. The worm-type explosive insect villager's ability to identify the location by sound was still a little poor. After Wyan arrived, it crashed through the interlayer of wooden boards and bit Wyan. That intuition was not based on facts, but Wyan did not doubt my intuition, and the fact was that the swearing villager exploded. Generally, the tentacles placed and waving in all directions caused chaos among the explosive insect villagers, allowing Wu Ji to benefit. Wyan confirmed that the bullets outside the shotgun were full, reloaded the bullets, and then searched through the boxes and cabinets to find bullets, just like in Raccoon City. Of course, the fire was not set by Wyan, but the fire attracted the remaining villagers in the village to put out the fire. These villagers even ignored Luogwang's existence and ran past me and ran towards the bar. The worm-type parasite that penetrated the interlayer twisted its body, confirmed Wyan's position, and then broke away from the original host and rushed towards Wyan. There are no bullets outside the gun. Wyan was also scared for a while, and he was sure that if he had not stopped the other party from getting the gun in time, he would be in much more danger. It seems that the last type is the weakest, but in this case the parasite can survive longer in the host. The seventh point is not that the smoke from the fire will attract other villagers, so I can raise the alarm while monitoring the enemy's movements. The luxurious wooden door can stop Wyan's determination to avoid the attack of the worm parasite. As soon as he got up, Wyan was about to leave the bar, but was blocked by 8 villagers who were searching for Wyan and asking the bartender to be careful. The bad news is that the flashbang has no effect on these parasites. Wyan reacted very slowly and braked directly, then immediately rushed to the left door with all his strength. Luogwang was about to answer Wyan's question when he heard the sound of chainsaws, and 2 chainsaws sounded at the same time, one on the right and one on the left, so Luogwang did not hear it wrong. Bang, click. Following the sound, Luogwang saw the chainsaw girl holding a chainsaw and wearing a sack hood walking towards him from the streets on the right and left. However, although the various types of parasites far away could not be killed directly, the control effect of the flashbang still existed, and it was worse than Luogwang imagined, so Luogwang took advantage of the enemy's inability to retreat and move effectively to kill these parasites one by one with a pistol. He is really good at comforting people. Wyan knew that it was Luogwang's unique way of comforting me, but I still managed to cheer up and complain. Luogwang Wyan also came to the square a little later than Luogwang. But when Luogwang reached for the new magazine, an ugly expression appeared on his face. Because Luogwang found that these exploding villagers were different from the villagers in this case, and they would not pay attention to friendly fire when facing other villagers. Wayang and Luogwang separated and went to the right area. Similar to the situation on Luogwang's side, there were also a bunch of houses there. Wayang did not immediately reach out for the shotgun, but pulled out the short knife that Marvin from Raccoon City gave me, stabbed the villager in the front of the head, and then kicked the bartender's body aside with his front foot against the villager's waist. Wyan hit the head of the villager in the middle. That shotgun shell exceeded the task and also shot the head of one of the villagers in front of him into a sieve. The villagers outside the village are probably almost all dealt with. Luo Guang looked at the villagers who fell on the street and smiled with satisfaction. In fact, I support Wyan's separate actions, and I think there is no need to cut off the front. If the two of them cooperate with each other to cover each other, they can directly deal with these difficult enemies. Looking around, Luo Guang saw no new enemies appearing, but saw thick smoke coming out from the other side of the village. Taking advantage of that opportunity, Wu Ji came to the center of the square and looked at the people nailed under the wooden frame. So the bartender's first reaction was not to use the weapon in front of him to kill Wyan. When he just hit the worm-type parasite, the parasite's body fluid splashed under Wyan's body, so Wyan checked his physical condition before getting up to confirm whether he was injured before hitting the door to avoid infection. Although these villagers went to put out the fire, they knew when they would continue to chase the two of them, so Wyan asked the most critical question directly: "What will you do next?" The reason why Wyan did not deal with these 8 villagers and then leave directly from the main gate was because I thought that one of the villagers would explode. Except for Ji Li, no village woman saw Wyan and immediately picked up the dung fork at hand, raised the dung fork low, and charged at Wyan with the fork head covered with cow dung. The main material of the partition between the 1st and 7th floors is only wooden boards, which make no sound when walking, and are also very strong, so the attacks of those parasites are actually 3-dimensional. Luo Guang saw that all the villagers outside his site had exploded parasites at this time, so I took out the flash bomb and tested it backwards, calculating that the flash bomb would be thrown before it exploded under the head of the explosion insect villagers, so that the explosion insect villagers present could be covered to the minimum. No matter how slow they ran, those villagers could not run faster than the bullets and were solved by Luo Guang one by one. Luo Guang's first reaction was not to say to Wyan, "Wyan, the fire he set angered people." Luo Guang did not deal with the Baneling villagers who were thrown away, but waited to deal with them together. So Wyan immediately checked the situation on the 7th floor at this time, and while ensuring the danger, he checked the situation in the windows on the 7th floor. In that situation, the main problem was that Wyan had only seen this kind of Baneling villager with 8 tentacles, so when I ran to the 7th floor and was about to climb out the window to leave, I was caught off guard by this worm-like parasite. For those villagers who know how to use guns, we don't have the idea of emptying the magazine when using the shotgun to protect the spring in the magazine. Meow, I watched she vanished and felt that the protagonist acted well. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 241. Chapter 235 Separate Actions. I didn't, don't talk nonsense. Leon, who was taking out the shotgun from his back, was stunned when he heard Luo Guang's words. He really didn't expect Luo Guang to say this when facing 2 fierce villagers with chainsaws. This is not what he should say now. Shouldn't he first determine how to deal with the 2 chainsaw muscular men who are obviously not easy to mess with? Luo Guang didn't choose to say this at this time on purpose, he just wanted to be naughty. Well, he did it on purpose, in order to relax Leon. After all, Lion's body is too tense now, which is not good for the next battle. Haha, Luo Guang replied, "Don't worry, I won't tell anyone." I didn't set the fire. Leon and Luo Guang talked, and their hands and feet were not slow. On the other hand, Leon also saw that Luo Guang didn't have any good plans, so he could only fight hard. So the 2 of them raised their guns and aimed and fired almost at the same time, in one go. The sack leather case of the chainsaw man was for light protection, not bulletproof, so facing the attack of Luo Guang and the others, the chainsaw man chose to add 2 steel plates on the left and right of the chainsaw frame. You take the manor road, Luo Guang, he can choose one of the 2 roads. Wyan decided to take the risk. Sadler shook his head outside the screen, so Wyan was ready to hang up the call to save some electricity. Before Sadler started with the words wishing him bad luck, Wyan hung up the phone. Sadler seemed to be very unfamiliar with Wyan, and delayed answering the questions that Wyan would complain about, and then said, "So you can only tell them the situation of the 8 roads, and it's up to them to choose." Wyan thought for a while, and said to Luo Guang, who was loading bullets into the empty magazine, "Shi Tao, you 2 should act separately." Therefore, the 2 chainsaw women who did not have rich logging experience did not use the swinging posture, but directly held the chainsaw and rushed over. However, the sound of ding-dong-dang rang out under the heads of the 2 chainsaw warriors, and some sparks and deflected bullets were captured by Luo Guang. In abnormal situations, the carbon steel saw blade of the chainsaw cannot cut through iron plates, and can only saw soft materials such as wood. So we need to find clues about the location of the president's man or you as soon as possible, and in order to improve efficiency, splitting up is the best choice. Wyan really wanted to complain that there were only 2 people on his side to carry out the mission, and even one of them was mainly tasked with finding the president's man. I want to be the one who protects others, not the one who is protected. Because Wyan was standing in front of Luo Guang, he saw Shi Tao's expression and was still amazed at Shi Tao's clean and neat attack just now. Okay, what about the other 2 ways? In the game of The Walking Dead, which has no endurance setting, the use of a chainsaw is a more abnormal way of use. The chainsaw, also known as a power saw, itself relies on the inertia brought by swinging to exert its power. On the contrary, the weight of the chainsaw itself is heavy. In many movies and TV dramas, this kind of swinging action will indeed weaken the terrifying atmosphere of the chainsaw maniac, but in reality it will only waste physical strength. The combat skills taught to Wyan by the agent training instructor and Krause are all based on facing humans as imaginary enemies. From a certain perspective, humans are very cautious, so the combat skills that Wyan learned are less about how to defend the strong points under his body, while attacking the enemy's strong points and weakening the enemy's combat effectiveness. These bandits who kidnapped the president's man have not yet called the president of the lighthouse country to make their demands. Wait a minute. According to the satellite map, there are not 8 ways. To be honest, you also think that they have too many people in that mission, but there is a way, that is not a job. Therefore, Wyan saw that he had completed all the agent training, and before he was officially laid off, he was appreciated by the president for his excellent skills and handsome appearance, and was ordered to rescue the kidnapped president's man in a critical situation. Before Luo Guang solved a chainsaw girl with lightning speed, the other chainsaw girl finally found that her chainsaw was fine, so she let go of her beloved chainsaw and prepared to defend against Luo Guang's next attack. Because apart from Hannigan, there are still some people who are still enjoying the noble life outside the castle, and they can always stuff rats and cockroaches into their mouths like the people above. He has no idea. That was the same as the separation just now. The distance between the 2 sides would be very far before the separation. If one of them got into trouble, the other person would definitely not be able to help in time. Luo Guang's 9mm pistol bullets and Lion's No. 12 shotgun shells could not penetrate the enemy's defense, and the bullets in the shotgun shells would not help even if they hit other places. Luo Guang was speechless for a while, and for a moment he didn't react to shooting to make up for the loss, and roared in his heart. Cover you. The 2 steel plates are not big, and will not affect the rapid movement of the saw blades on the saw frame. The attack power is still as strong as chopping melons and vegetables. Luo Guang did not respond, his eyes slowly confirmed the position and running speed of the 2 chainsaw girls, and at the same time, he slowly calculated the remaining time for the 2 chainsaw girls to attack him. Wyan thought that the president would open a hole under his man, and then put the positioning device back, so if the positioning device was installed inside. Wow, Wyan exclaimed. It's true that the parasites are growing outside the head, but the two chainsaw girls' chests were being cut by chainsaws, so the parasites in the two chainsaw girls' bodies would only move when faced with possible safety. Luo Guang, Wei Ang turned around to confirm the situation of the chainsaw girl, but found out whether Shi Tao had made any evasive movements or fired. Luo Guang, who had taken a few steps forward, and Wei Ang, who had not run far away, seized the opportunity of the two fierce girls with chainsaws to attack each other. They used the chainsaws to defend their heads, and fired without hesitation. The bullet was blocked, but the impact of the bullet was huge. If it was definitely an abnormal person, the concussion would be considered serious, but it only served as a containment for the two fierce women. Does he think the possibility of the chicks being here at the factory is higher? You're not the rookie police officer you were in Raccoon City anymore. During the training of agents, Wei Ang had never lost any skills in close combat, and he was the only person in the same period to get full marks in that combat event. Shi Doxio showed the small satellite map and continued, besides this, there is no castle in the lower ground in that area. But due to the low height difference, if they want to climb the cliff and walk through the forest, you can sail across the lake through the pier on the fish farm to the pier at the foot of the castle, and then go back to the castle from here. Did Luo Guang guess wrong? The sackhoods of the two chainsaw girls were indeed covered with full coverage helmets, which were cold-heartedly funded by Salazar's fourth head of the family. Why did the parasite grow outside the head that time? The types of knives used by Luo Guang and Wei Ang are not the same, so Wei Ang just borrows them and uses them blindly. If Sadler thought about that, he could only say reluctantly, so he must be cautious. The first one is in the northeast direction of the square. There is a giant windmill as a sign at the end of the road. After you pass the windmill, there is no road leading to a manor. This is the place where the young eagle disappeared. You recommend him to go here to look for it first. Just as Luo Guang was about to say that he had broken the 100% Baneling record, he saw 8 legs sprouting from the joint between the necks of the two severed heads, and they ran away in a hurry. Watching the two charging chainsaw girls stop the car, they smashed their chainsaws into the iron plate behind the other's chest, making a harsh sound and flying sparks. The well-armed chainsaw girl is a weak armed force outside the village, and there are few suitable young and middle-aged hosts, so the leader of Hannigan found Ramon Salazar in order to protect those people. Luo Guang thought about it, feeling that he had never heard of it outside the game in the future, but the foreign club is too concerned about it, so I'll let you go. Although Shi Tao asked Wei Ang to cover, when Wei Ang saw Shi Tao taking out the knife, he fired his gun to prevent accidental injury. I understood that the cover Luo Guang said was actually to remind me to accidentally hurt myself. Krause, who was the instructor of Wei Ang, also conducted special one-on-one training for Wei Ang's subsequent teammate. I, who despised Wei Ang, imparted all my combat experience to Wei Ang. Wei Ang and Luo Guang were standing together just now. When Wei Ang came running, the chainsaw girl who originally planned to attack Wei Ang did not turn around to chase Wei Ang, but switched her attack target to Luo Guang. This guy must be wearing an iron helmet. Seeing that the opponent used a few complicated pieces of iron to seal his bullet, Luo Guang was not worried at all. It was Simmons who asked him to bring an assault rifle, but those guys couldn't block a 7.62 shot at all. Caliber rifle ammunition. It was the same situation with Luo Guang, but I didn't escape immediately, but stayed where I was. Outside the battle just now, Luo Guang confirmed that the residents would look out for the friendly forces around them when attacking the enemy, and now I am planning to take advantage of this to make the two chainsaw guys kill each other. So difficult. The villagers behind his eyes look like humans, but they are monsters inside. They are fatal to humans. Putting them under those villagers is just an itch. Therefore, Wei Ang feels that melee weapons can be used in the face of biological crises. The role played is small. That's why we, who are in the prime of our physical functions, are selected and specially trained as specialized thugs. After dealing with the two enemies, Luo Guang immediately moved forward, away from the two corpses, but neither of the two chainsaw girls had baneling bugs. Because this is the place where the president's son disappeared, Wei Ang can only bite the bullet and go there. Even if he can find the president's son, he should be able to find some clues. In that case, take the church road and go to the fish farm to make sure there are no boats. Wei Ang also liked the invulnerable enemy, which reminded me of a tyrant, and I couldn't curse angrily. Is there any way out there? Since you have no clues, we can only conduct a blanket search, Luo Guang said to Wei Ang before confirming the danger. But did I choose to continue shooting because I was angry, wasting precious shotguns, and the chainsaw girl who was closer to me protected her head with a chainsaw, and ended up charging towards me? Wei Ang replied with a smile, I am also a person who has survived various biohazard incidents, so I don't want to hide in front of others when things are easy. It's wrong. On the contrary, places like castles are more suspicious. As expected, there was no gap where the chainsaw hit the fierce girl's neck, and Shi Tao easily completed the kill. Watching Wei Ang take the first step, Luo Guang came to the vicinity of the watchtower and looked at the stone door without the emblem of the dark cult. Sadler, tell you how many roads there are out there? It seems you have to try your luck to search that place comprehensively, Wei Ang asked. The enemies outside will leave various clues for Shi Tao and us to confirm or find the location of the president's man, just like the game. After that, Luo Guang took out several boxes of 9mm bullets from his backpack and asked Wei Ang to replenish the ammunition. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Although these villagers are not infected with biochemical viruses, but parasites, the body's recovery and resistance capabilities are almost the same as those of the biochemical weapons produced by these T-viruses. As long as they hit the vital point, it will not be itchy or very slow. Can't recover? Received, don't you have any information yet? Wei Ang asked. Young Eagle is the code name of the president's son, while Wei Ang's code name is Condor 1. As for other villagers, to be honest, Leader Hannigan also expects us to block the enemy, and even less to let us be responsible for production work. That cannot be known from whether Sadler mentioned it just now. The disappearance of the eagle in this place means that the eaglet will be outside. It cannot be a trap by the enemy, deliberately luring the rescuers there. When Luo Guang saw this, he didn't say anything else. I have less confidence in Wei Ang than Wei Ang has in myself, so I can only mourn for these villagers. Wei Ang is still quite untalented in the use of swords. From Luo Guang's action with the sword just now, I discovered that Luo Guang and I have the same view on how to use the sword, and they absorb the parts that I cannot use. But Shi Tao was not prepared. He raised the gun with his right hand and fired several shots at the head of another fierce woman to restrain the enemy's subsequent movements. Then I chopped off the enemy's head with a knife again. Luo Guang drew out the visible Langkar saber and asked Wei Ang to cover himself. After I stepped down, I swung the saber with all my strength, started from the neck of the chainsaw girl, and directly chopped off the head of one of the chainsaw girls. Wei Ang rejected Luo Guang's words, and the two of them prepared to separate before finalizing some contact matters. In addition to using chainsaws on their heads for retreat protection, those chainsaw girls also wore homemade armor vests to protect the back and front of their bodies. They also added a few discarded iron plates to the back and front of their clothes for retreat protection to block small children. Caliber bullets, but it cannot be used to block pistol bullets and shotgun bullets. The square is relatively open, which is convenient for Wei Ang and the chainsaw girl to deal with, and I feel that my endurance and physical strength are lower than that of the biochemical monster, so I immediately ran to avoid the attack and ran towards the sparse housing area. Luo Guang saw the right opportunity and jumped at the last moment, easily dodging the chainsaws that were hitting his waist from the right and left. There are definitely only two ways or one way, so Wei Ang can only get entangled. The two fierce women with chainsaws who were chosen by Hannigan, the sex construction company, were originally lumberjacks outside the village, and were much older than the other villagers. The back road leads to a factory. The factory has shown no signs of activity in recent months, so it should not be abandoned yet. The front road leads to the church, fish farm, and quarry. Luo Guang and Wei Ang are from the same department, so I can only ask Wei Ang to inquire. In addition, there was a biochemical crisis in that place. Although Wei Ang knew the president's son's current situation, rescuing the president's son was urgent. Therefore, before the chainsaw could completely cut through the iron plates on both sides, the saw blade broke apart. However, with the saw blade, the chainsaw was still as non-threatening as a fork stuck with excrement. Luo Guang and the two had to find another way to deal with the two fierce women. Meow, I watched a movie today, in which the heroine was wearing a wedding dress and holding a chainsaw, but after just a few swings, the heroine got tired. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 242. Chapter 236 Minotaur. After Leon and Luo Guang parted ways, they immediately followed Hannigan's instructions and walked towards the northeast corner of the village square. There was only one door in that direction, so Leon didn't have to play rock paper scissors, he just pushed open the iron door and walked in. There was no one along the way, only bear traps and a broken leg on the ground. The broken leg was a human leg, broken from the middle of the calf. Leon carefully observed that it was not the girl's leg, and there was a broken animal trap next to it. Judging from the scene, it should be one of the unlucky villagers who was caught. Leon, who was gloating in his heart, also took it as a lesson and became more cautious with every step. Being caught by a bear trap in such a place means death. Walking along the road, Leon saw the location of the giant windmill from a distance. This place is a farm with a huge barn, several small houses and cows' heads, pig pens and chicken coops for raising cows, pigs and chickens. Leon hid behind the tree and carefully observed the position of the villagers in the farm. These villagers are the product of parasites. Unlike zombies, they still retain a certain degree of independent thinking ability, so they can be arranged to engage in production work. That floor is a workshop. The villagers don't seem to be repairing their tools there. Wyan also saw the clothes with iron plates installed on the front and back under the chainsaw fierce woman. Leon looked out again and found that there was no white cow around the villager, 2 pigs of the white double evil and a hen who came to visit. Wyan took advantage of the time when the villager on the other side turned his head and immediately walked over quietly. He came to the front of the villager and cut the villager's spine on the front of his back, where the parasite was found by dissection. The sound of the hammer hitting the ground was very dull. Wyan was also sure that it would attract other villagers outside the farm, so I put away the dagger and took out the pistol again. It was just that those animals seemed to be no different from the ones Wyan had seen later. They didn't attack Wyan, nor did they make warning calls. When they saw Wyan looking at them, they turned away without any intelligence, or just ate with their heads up. I retreated cautiously along the path left in the room, and when I turned a corner, I saw a thin line on the ground behind my ankle. At the end of the thin line was a pack of explosives, which was taped to the support column in the room. Before a loud bang, Wyan, who was hiding in front of the load-bearing column, covered his mouth and nose with one hand, and aimed his gun at the Minotaur lying on the ground with the other hand. He shot the spine and the head, and finished off the monster that was struggling to get up. Wyan confirmed the situation as soon as possible. He saw the Minotaur rushing towards him with light steps, and the other villagers outside the farm also found Wyan running out of the workshop. Afterwards, the villager who was busy next to the barn walked out of the barn and closed the door under Wyan's gaze. Using the same trick, Wyan dodged the enemy's attack again, and then ran out of the double-opening small door of the workshop. Wyan did not turn around and run away, but rolled to the side to avoid it, because I saw that the wooden gear I was looking for was under the table in front of the Minotaur. Wyan noticed Niuhwaki's gaze, but the bull did not shout or come to harass his handsome guy, so Wyan paid little attention to it. So Wyan focused his attention on the hole that was opened by the weak line next to that layer. No one had built a wooden frame inside the hole. In order to avoid the dagger stabbing under the spine, Wyan's blade was inserted a little to the left of the spine. According to my thoughts just now, this is unlikely to be the storage place of the missing gear. Wyan was glad that he looked up when he turned the corner, and hurriedly moved his feet forward to leave the top of the thin line. Then I took a small step over and continued to walk out, and found a wooden ladder going down. I saw Wyan slowly walking around a large room used by villagers for worship, and then moved to the left. There was a villager holding a pitchfork to sort the hay together. After confirming the plan, Wyan continued to retreat, walking under the wooden frame. Wyan was more cautious than underground to avoid making a loud noise. When he made the first cut, Wyan immediately covered the villager's mouth. Before he confirmed that the parasite had been solved by hand, I immediately drew the knife and sent it into the enemy's brain again to stir it. The villagers following the Minotaur also did not remind the Minotaur, whose vision was affected by the hood, and stepped into the damage range of the trip mine with the Minotaur. There was a grey-haired cow outside the cowshed, standing in the middle, chewing hay, looking at Wyan, who was slightly bent and retreating. It was a game, but there was no blood bar or blood volume system, but under the influence of parasites or biochemical viruses, the worse the host's body was, the worse the physique would be before mutation or infection, and the recovery ability would be weaker than that of the old, strong, sick, and disabled. The villagers who were busy in the house heard an unusual sound coming from the window, so they turned back to check, but they didn't find anything, so they thought they had heard it wrong and turned their heads back to continue their work. As a result, the villagers who had just turned their heads heard another strange sound. The villagers on this farm were not alerted by the fierce fighting in the square. They were all concentrating on their work to complete the offerings required by the leader Sadler for the next quarter. When stealth assassination, because they need to deal with the enemy at close range, Wyan will first deal with the parasites in the enemy's body. It is too safe to stay within the attack range of the explosive insect villagers. Wayang, holding a gear in his right hand and a pistol in his left hand, did not slow down to fight back. I thought of a way to deal with the enemy behind me. This chapter is not over yet, please click the next page to continue reading. The Minotaur, like an angry bull, focused all his attention on the bottom of Wayang and did not notice the trip rope on his feet. That time, Duan charged very slowly. He did not lower his hammer, but bent down and raised his head, aiming his horns at Wayang, as if he wanted to kill Wayang with the horns under his head. Looking out of the window, Wayang saw that there was no villager, who was fiddling with something with his back to him. I need to confirm that the Minotaur is not walking at the end, just don't let the villagers in front of me fall into the mine first. Complaining is also helpful. Wayang always gives up when he encounters trouble. I can only find a way myself. If the iron gate will make it easy for Wayang to pass, then Wayang has to find a way to open the door, and the switch of the old-fashioned door should be far away. Avoiding the light but deadly attack of the Minotaur, Wyan immediately rushed to the location of the wooden gear and took it in his hand. Being firm will lead to defeat. Gear transmission, Wyan saw the iron gate moving down from the large window on the side, and the door finally opened. That was what Marvin said to Wyan. Wyan also knew that in the ghost place where the biochemical crisis broke out, any firmness would cost life, usually when facing the infected. The wheel axle structure under the wall was missing a key gear, which reminded Wyan of the experience of looking for things to decrypt in the police station. The stairs were made of branches and sticks, so Wyan had a way to slide up directly from below, and Wyan saw that the distance to the ground was too low, so I just lay on the edge and then let go and fell to the ground. Snap! Wyan's slowest running speed was faster than the opponent, but the enemy had a small hammer in his hand, and he was the one who avoided defense, so I couldn't calmly avoid the opponent's attack and then lead the Minotaur into this room without trip mines. Wyan confirmed again that there was something wrong with these animals, or that they would hinder his actions, and then left to trouble the last villager. Wyan rushed directly to the villager, then stabbed him in the back with his front knife and covered his mouth with his right hand. After the villager reacted, the seventh knife had not yet approached the villager's temple, and in the eyes of the 7 animals, he completed an assassination. It seemed to be a warehouse outside, with no leather or wooden boards, but Wyan did not see anything gear-like. And this villager was squatting next to a pile of cow bones, seemingly checking something, very focused, and did not notice that the white cow next to him was staring at the approaching Wyan. So Wyan continued to retreat and also chose to pass through the cowshed. The place where the enemy just passed was more dangerous, and many people would not look back to check the dangerous area they just passed. As the name suggests, the villager who picked up the long-handled hammer next to him wore a cow head hood under his head, and 2 pairs of sharp horns were retained under the hood, and the entire cow head was painted with red paint. There was a mechanism room below. Wyan had seen a similar axle transmission structure in the clock tower of the Raccoon City Police Department. Besides, there was a pile of debris and a grinding wheel inside. Before confirming that the missing gear would cause the door to close again, Wyan hid the gear outside the room. I thought that the door would be closed again just after I left. After stuffing the villager back into the house, Wyan climbed over the window and walked out of the room. But after a little thought, Wyan came to a conclusion that the gear should be outside the farm, and it was unlikely to be far away from the city gate. If so, it would be very cumbersome and time-consuming for these villagers to open the door every time. The villager just poked his head out, and Wyan, who was squatting above the window, stood up, clamped the enemy's neck with his right hand, raised the combat dagger with his left hand, and inserted it into the villager's back to kill the parasite. Then I directly twisted the villager's neck and stabbed the villager in the head. Later, in the village square, the environment was simple and there were few enemies. In addition, they were discovered, so Wayang could not sneak in to fight. But now Wayang observed and found that there were not few enemies outside the farm. Apart from the enemies seen in the house, there were only 8 people working inside. After decryption, Wayang did not leave immediately, but dismantled the wooden gear. Judging from the size of the missing position of the gear, this gear would be very large, so Wayang did not rummage through the boxes, but planned to go upstairs to have a look. The iron door was not locked. Wayang opened the door carefully, and walked back to find a large warehouse with many wooden boxes and grain bags. After dealing with the enemy, Wayang put the bodies of the villagers under the haystack, and then covered them with hay casually, and dragged them for a while. There was nothing on both sides of the iron gate, so Wayang focused his attention on the iron gate next to it. Moreover, the 8 people were working alone, and the distance between them was not far, which gave Wyan the opportunity to perform a stealth assassination operation. The window was locked from the outside with a bolt, and Wyan thought it was a pipe dream to open the window with a little noise, so I planned to let the enemy help me open the window. Ah, damn it! Wyan just landed and raised his head, and saw a minotaur. At this time, there was no worry about the enemy's exploding insects, so Wyan moved forward to attract the enemy, and shot a villager who passed the minotaur in the head. The cowshed was straight, and there was no door installed at the front and back. The minotaur was at least half a body shorter than these villagers, and was very weak, comparable to the chainsaw girl, but the minotaur did not wear the bulletproof clothes, and the hammer in his hand obviously protected his entire head. To a certain extent, the minotaur's health was naturally thicker than the middle-aged and elderly villagers who followed him. But Wyan did not lose his focus because of this, and decided to use the trip mine trap he saw later to deal with the minotaur. This chapter is not over yet. Please click on the next page to continue reading. Click. Turning around, Wyan found that these animals were looking at him, and he felt a little scared, just like he thought someone knew that he had done a good deed, but after doing the good deed, he turned around and found that a circle of people were looking at him. Just before this villager left, the road to the iron gate that looked like the ancient city wall gate was unobstructed. Instead, he mooed like a mad cow, and the Minotaur picked up the hammer and rushed towards Wyan. Then Wyan looked at the villager, who turned back and found that he had retreated out of the cowshed, so I put the previous target under this villager and immediately turned to walk towards the cowshed. I also know that it is out of love for cosplay, or that he is a combination of man and cow. The words spoken by the Minotaur are local slang. Then I put the villager on the ground, and there was nothing outside to cover the body, and I wanted to move the body back to the cowshed, so I got up directly and planned to deal with other enemies after the body was found. Wyan didn't take a closer look at this explosive pack connected with a thin rope. There were no iron nails or other debris stuck underneath, so the damage of the trip mine was basically explosion damage, so Wyan had to finish off these villagers one by one. Wyan leaned against the wall of the cowshed and looked outside. He didn't see the figure of the villager. I thought the enemy had passed through the cowshed. That time, you did not continue your work, but stood up and walked to the window, opened it, and then looked inside. When they were not crazy, these villagers were no different from ordinary people, but Leon would not relax his vigilance because of this appearance, or think that these villagers could still be saved, and take the initiative to greet them. Then it may have nothing to do with Umbrella Corporation, right? Leon muttered to himself, turning his head to check everywhere, and did not find the missing gear, and there was something that could not be replaced. Leon was vague about whether it was the same, meaning that the Minotaur was not there. These villagers did not attack Leon on their own, but followed the Minotaur with all kinds of handy tools. The door made a creaking sound when it was closed, so Leon planned to sneak in and deal with this villager. Leon pulled out the combat dagger that Marvin left for himself when he was in the Raccoon City Police Department and held the dagger with an ice pick, and my pistol was put back into the slow-draw holster. After confirming that neither of those things had happened, Wayang climbed down from the 7th floor, installed the wooden gear, and then pulled the mechanism on the side. There was no conspicuous giant windmill next to the city gate, so it was probably not the route Hannigan mentioned, so Wayang checked whether the people outside the barn had come out while moving towards the iron gate. While doing those things, Wayang was also waiting and confirming whether any villagers had followed and whether there would be a collapse before the explosion. Recently. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 243. Chapter 237. Wolf. Dog. After separating from Leon, Luo Guang came to the door with the emblem of the Church of Light. This is the Plaka parasite. The emblem of the Church of Light is the shape of an adult Plaka parasite. Luo Guang felt that this thing was not out of place in the alien world. This is not like a game. There is no bell ringing, so no one opened the door for Luo Guang to sneak in. He was not afraid of being beaten by the villagers. However, Luo Guang would not be blocked outside by the door so easily. He could just climb over the wall or jump to the top of the house and then smash the ceiling with the Iron Man landing posture. Leon also saw this, so he didn't say that this road was not accessible now and he should go to other places first. The door is dead, but people are alive. It's not in a confined space. Can people be blocked by a door? Thinking so, Luo Guang jumped directly to the roof, smashed a hole, and followed the gravity to enter the house. This house is the gathering hall for the villagers. There is a shrine, no electric lights, only a few small windows, so it is very dark inside, so the villagers lit candles here and kept them lit. No supplies. Luo Guang looked around quickly and found nothing useful for this mission. Although it was expelled from the wolf pack, other wolves did not kill Dabai or drive him out of the territory. With the help of its mother, it did not die at an early age. Suddenly, the wolf dog trembled all over, and Wang Rong saw that the blood had not stopped flowing from the broken leg of the wolf dog. But there is nothing we must do on time. After a day, we will go to the gathering hall to listen to God's teachings. There are no villagers outside the gathering hall because it is time to end the collective prayer. The puppy put Dabai on and took out the syringe. You, hungry, ran out to find food. That answer to Wang Rong why it ran to the human territory. Bear with it for now, you guys go find food. The puppy remembered that Wyan said there was a fish farm down the road, so he should be able to find food. It's not that I'm too vague. Dogs eat fish meat with fewer bone spurs. The puppy hurried over and found that the wolf-like dog was dying, and the call for help just now was more like an announcement of its last gasp. The report appeared in the puppy's mind. The wolf dog looked very kind afterwards, but before it shrank, it was only a big dog and a small dog, and it would be fierce no matter how it bared its teeth. But the other party was a human after all, so the puppy couldn't be too harsh on it. Good guy, here, bad guy, fellow tribe, dead. The big dog agreed to his two suggestions, so the puppy decided to give the big dog a very vulgar name. According to the requirements of the adapter, the safety of the creature has been evaluated. Safety, yes. Yes, the puppy decided to adopt the dog like wolf. Therefore, Wang Rong took a few steps forward before he stood up and took out his pistol. He was sure that the wolf dog behind him could not withstand the virus of the puppy. There were only two possibilities for it: either it would explode and die, or it would mutate into a monster. Follow him. It's necessary. The villagers gave up their property and beloved sons and daughters in exchange for the blessing of our master, the leader Sadler. Wang Rong was prepared for the situation ahead, so I took out my pistol and took action directly when the wolf dog mutated. Wang Rong could sense what Dabai was doing, but I didn't stop Dabai until I heard an abnormal sound coming from the front. Okay, you do a blood test on him. There were clocks in various places in the village, so the villagers lived a life of going out at sunrise and returning at sunset. The big dog knew what a bear trap was, and also knew the meaning of breaking a leg, but it sensed Wang Rong's deliberate spoof idea. Looking back, the puppy saw a bear trap with a missing piece and Dabai licking his mouth, and asked the system, "What do you call safe?" The puppy walked over, picked up the big guy with both hands, and confirmed, "It's still a boy." Thinking that the snacks he was carrying were chocolates, the puppy agreed to Dabai's request for food. Only when he caught a lost traveler, Wang Rong would specially hold a ceremony to make the poor traveler a host of parasites and join the small family of the Dark Church. Before taking that name, I knew why Wang Rong felt that Dabai looked more and more silly, and believed that he had picked up a hybrid without Samoyed blood. The big dog blinked and looked at the puppy. Didn't answer, that question was too embarrassing for the wolf. "Whoa," the big dog protested. The puppy stopped reading after reading a few sentences, but I didn't put the Dark Church back, but put it out of the backpack. My collection addiction broke out. Wolves are social creatures, so the puppy politely asked about Dabai's parents. Although he had not been taught, the big dog could understand what Wang Rong said, or more precisely, he understood the ideas that the puppy conveyed to the big dog. The blessing was illusory, but the real parasites were not necessarily worse than this illusory blessing. The puppy naturally knew why the other party could understand his words, so he did not ask that question. By the way, Luo Guang's adaptability is A, which Wang Rong knew when he spent a good night with Luo Guang before leaving Raccoon City. But now Luo Guang's adaptability has not been lowered, that is, he knows it. Although Wang Rong is a cat person, I can also abandon that guy for that reason. The reason why Wang Rong decided to adopt it was that the big dog did not have his own virus in his body, but I dared to let the big dog run around. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. That sentence did not sound like scolding, but considering that I was talking to a dog, it seemed to have something wrong. Old farmers offer inferior grains, thin and strong livestock farmers offer strong pigs and cattle, and poor old women offer their beloved children. The white wolf dog's breathing became stronger and stronger, and the puppy immediately fed the wolf dog a few drops of its own blood. That led to a problem. The broken version of the virus in the puppy's body is a special type for me, so other people or creatures may not be able to adapt and integrate their own viruses, so Wang Rong did not consider the other party's luck. Dabai raised his head and looked at the puppy with his round eyes, indicating that it was because he noticed that the puppy hated cats. There were ambushes and villagers inside the door. Wang Rong was a little curious about where these villagers had gone. Dabai stood on the ground, motionless, watching the puppy draw a few milliliters of blood from under it, and then drank it all. Dabai mistakenly thought that Wang Rong was transformed from a flying blood-sucking monster, and he trembled. If the villagers were to see the leader of their own sect, Wang Rong, it would be the time for the villagers to pay taxes according to the scriptures. It is worth mentioning that the puppy, let alone the wolf dog, has never given anyone the original virus in my body, even Luo Guang. This is only a half version. Analysis completed. That analysis even did not report at a low speed, and directly prompted that the analysis was completed. The ideas conveyed were expressed in Chinese or English. Wang Rong could sense the other party's thoughts and felt that the other party meant the same thing. The puppy was a little disappointed. I was going to ask Dabai if he had seen the president's man Ashley Graham. At the same time, it was a pity that I didn't have Ashley's personal belongings under me. I wanted Dabai to smell and track him. The wolf dog made a crackling sound inside, and something on the surface of the skin was bulging. Then it deflated like a balloon and disappeared. The puppy asked the system, but the system didn't have relevant data, so it couldn't answer Wang Rong's question. Passing by the bear trap that had caught him, Dabai secretly glanced at the puppy. Before confirming that Wang Rong hadn't turned around, he bit the bear trap fiercely. He didn't feel itchy, and took revenge on the bear trap that attacked him. Since he is a white wolf, this is called Dabai bad. Time passed by, and Wang Rong didn't slow down to leave to find Ashley and Ada. He looked at the wolf dog curiously, whose body had shrunk by nearly 1/8 and looked like a rejuvenated wolf dog. On this day, in addition to confirming the tax revenue for the season, Sadler also held a sacrificial ceremony to confirm the development of parasites in the villagers infected by parasites. Of course, the wolf dog did not show his teeth. Before the mutation was completed, he looked at the puppy with a whine. He carefully approached the puppy, stretched his feet and walked back all the way. He looked up at the puppy's expression and then took another big step forward. He followed you before. His name was Broken Leg. The puppy gave up his hesitation and said to Dabai, Dabai, he should live outside the mountain, right? Why did he come there? He was afraid of being caught and eaten. Ah, the big dog seemed very satisfied with the name and laughed with his tongue sticking out. Name, Dabai, breed, Iberian wolf, age, 1.5 years old, adaptability B+, only adaptable to specific types of viruses. But why is he like a cat? Wang Rong was speechless. The puppy found that there was a broken leg under the triggered trap. After inspection, the virus in the body showed evolution, and only ordinary viruses with gene fragments of T. Veronica virus and sleeping god virus remained. According to the analysis of ordinary viruses, no abilities that are useless to the adapter were found. The body size has become larger, but the body has not mutated due to the genes of T. Veronica virus and sleeping god virus. Wang Rong walked around and confirmed that the white wolf dog had no other changes except body size, and the broken leg had grown back. But no matter how scared it was, it had no intention of leaving the puppy. The only interesting thing was a copy of the Book of Light, which was placed on a shrine and taken down by Luo Guang. Wait, Dabai is a wolf? Wang Rong was entangled in whether Dabai was a wolf or a dog. Judging from Dabai's reply, Dabai is an outlier in their wolf pack. To be more specific, it is not that Dabai has albinism. Therefore, for other wolves with gray fur, Dabai's skin color is suitable for survival in that area. Over time, it was excluded and expelled from the wolf pack. Time was tight just now, and Wang Rong did not have a regular supply, and also needed the medicine for regeneration of broken limbs like rebirth number 1, so this was the only best option. Ah, Dabai heard it and wagged his tail very happily, following the pace of the puppy. Bad, this is not a wolf, but a dog. Although the puppy was a little disappointed, I didn't turn around and leave directly because of this. I wonder if the wolf dog has turned into Fury or some 7th-dimensional character, so I am also worried about adopting that big guy. Before the interview with Dabai, the new employee of the GIMZ team, the puppy then had to give Dabai a physical examination to confirm that the virus in his body has not changed in Dabai's body. What's the situation? This is called a bear trap. It didn't contribute to your chance. If it must be necessary to pass the blood routine test, the puppy's blood usually carries its own exclusive virus. Although for Wang Rong, he also needs the big dog to help him deal with the giant, it will put the big dog in danger. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Luo Guang looked through it for a few times, and it was full of the words "eat people." The title of the leader replaced the name of the master and can be seen everywhere in the Dark Canon, but they are all in the position of beneficiaries. Halfway through the journey, he heard a dog barking nearby. Wang Rong thought of the big dog outside the game and walked over. That is because the system in the puppy's body is a dog system, which can speak dog language, but the sensory perception ability of the T. Veronica virus allows the big dog to convey his thoughts to the puppy. The puppy's ears heard the wolf barking, but the brain directly translated it. So when Xiaogu wanted Dabai to follow him, Dabai agreed without hesitation. Okay, doesn't he have any idea about this? Xiaogu looked at the evaluation of safety in front, and then looked at Dabai rubbing against his feet, and nodded. It was indeed unsafe. Although Dabai spoke incoherently, Xiaogu still understood that there might be some problems with the villagers outside, resulting in insufficient food rations, so they retreated from the mountain to sweep. After that, he passed by the hunter's house, and there were indeed many animal furs outside. Because there are no controlled parasites, Sadler or Salazar will be present, and even the priests on hand have not been sent to give speeches. Daegu struggled for a few times in Wang Rong's hands, like a big child rolling on the ground to protest. Outside the assembly hall are all things related to the Dark Church. Before Xiaogu confirmed whether he had missed any clues about Ashley, he pushed the door and left from the front of the assembly hall. The blood ended from the trap and went all the way to the front of a tree. Whether he can survive or not depends on his luck. The puppy looked at the wolf dog and said, then stood up. If the white wolf dog behind him had not moved around before being caught by the bear trap, the blood loss would have been so slow, and he could have saved the other party more calmly. The size, or to be more precise, the entire skeleton has become larger. Perhaps the energy is enough to complete the mutation, so the body has become larger and the strength is concentrated to save his life. The puppy sighed, thinking that the big guy is really a big kid, and said, yes, he is bad when he is a dog. The white wolf dog is still panting, but the situation is less bad than before, and it looks like it is out of breath like before. Therefore, Dabai stopped acting alone when he was older and became a lone wolf. Wang Rong could see the bell tower of the church nearby, thinking that the president's man Ashley would be locked in the church like in the game, and I took a step back. But the dog is asking for help. As a cat lover, the puppy has sympathy for similar animals, so he will naturally pay attention to the big dog's call for help. Yes, you are annoying. Meow, I looked around but couldn't find the button to add pictures after the chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 244. Chapter 238 Ashley's Clue. Luo Guang took Xiao Bai and continued to set off. To reach the fish farm, they had to pass the church, so Xiao Bai had to starve for a while. However, Xiao Bai seemed to have evolved into an iron-eating beast, eating those bear traps like eating biscuits, crunchy. This was a good thing, but in order to let Xiao Bai learn to survive in a world dominated by humans, Luo Guang began to teach Xiao Bai his own experience along the way. The first rule was not to eat iron or other things that normal wolves don't eat in front of guys other than himself. The second rule was to learn to bark. After absorbing the virus, Xiao Bai's intelligence improved a lot. After a little practice, it learned a new foreign language, dog language. This was also Luo Guang's helpless move. It was more difficult to get approval for the certificate of raising wolves than the certificate of raising dogs. Of course, Luo Guang could go through the X organization, but raising wolves was too conspicuous. As for Xiao Bai, he didn't have any special ideas about this, so he didn't protest Luo Guang's practice of letting wolves pretend to be dogs. According to the 3 rules of the ancestors, Luo Guang should set up another one, but now he didn't think of it, so he had to give up. So for Sadler, it was the right choice for Salazar to let him take care of all the parasites, and Sadler turned a blind eye to Salazar's hedonistic behavior. Luo Guang couldn't look at that thing directly, and it even hurt Luo Guang's face. These villagers didn't understand the fate they were about to face, and we were pierced by the electric dragon shot by Lu Jing while we were crowded together. Although Dabai's teeth are bad now, his body shape is a small problem, so Lu Jing let Dabai, who looks suitable for fighting, hide outside the bushes. Dabai heard Luo Guang's words and understood. When he was a child, his mother taught him about teamwork, but he became a lone wolf very slowly and didn't develop that habit. I said I was cooking, but it wasn't because Luo Guang saw that the wild deer was fat, so I was just being stingy with the electricity in my body. I used electricity to roast the wild deer before processing it in a complicated way, and at the same time, I let Dabai know the consequences of offending me. Since Dabai knew his mistake, Luo Guang didn't continue to investigate, but cooked for Dabai. Why did he come there? Luo Guang didn't scold Dabai directly, but asked him the reason first. But the parasite still misjudged Luo Guang's slowest speed. Luo Guang could dodge some bullets fired by guns with faster initial velocities, not to mention the bone spurs fired by muscle activity. The 8 parasites stepped on half of the hunter villager's body and jumped forward, and the bone spurs shot out from their tentacles at the same time. But Luo Guang would also be so brutal to dismantle the door of the church. I found that there was no colored glass under the main door of the church, so I couldn't break the glass directly and retreat into the church from this place. Before confirming that there was a problem again, Luo Guang ended his journey. Luo Guang got the key clue. This is not the place where the president's man was imprisoned. Therefore, I still think that the appearance of the President Man in that world is not much different from the President Man in the Resident Evil 4 game I played. Dabai hid obediently, lying on the ground, with his head high, and the whole wolf close to the ground, trying to hide his figure as much as possible. It was through Luo Guang that he slowly pieced together the general meaning through words. 8 bone arrows shot at Luo Guang from the side and back. This was the hunters outside the village coming back from the outside of the mountain. With Luo Guang's speed, the 8 hunter villagers had just jumped up, and Luo Guang had not yet completed the operation of tearing the villagers with his hands. Then he turned around and swept his legs, kicking the 8 hunter villagers in the waist. That was the secret signal agreed upon by Luo Guang and Wei Ang. Woof! The villagers were not determined, holding farm tools in their hands, and rushed towards Lu Jing. Whoosh! 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 Dabai looked at the wild deer that was roasted on the spot, swallowed his saliva very humanely, and his slightly open mouth had not yet drooled. As the only 8 hunters outside the village, our long-term experience of fighting with prey makes us more experienced than the special villagers, so before the first 8 arrows, we knew that bows and arrows were useful to the enemy. But at this time, Lu Jingning had not received any reports of intruders, and the special villagers could not stop the intruders at all. Bad food, smell it. Yes, Sadler wanted to fill his territory with cameras, and there was no electricity in the remote places that could be connected to the national grid. But Luo Guang had not sent 8 secret signals before, and there was no response from Yan, which only meant that Yan was unlikely to have an accident. It must be that Sadler needed the internal response of the Salazar family to find the location of the parasite seal. Ramon Salazar was in the eyes of Sadler, who intended to rule the world. Stepping on the stone slabs under the road, Lu Jing was standing behind the enemy in the dark, looking at the villagers who had not yet discovered him. Thinking that Yan was now meeting Aida, Luo Guang took the well-fed Dabai and pushed the door and retreated outside the churchyard. Later, when counting the bullets, Lu Jing felt that he had to save some bullets. Anyway, whether the electricity in my body can be restored by itself, I don't need to find something to eat, but Luo Guang has never seen or picked up the bullets. Lu Jingning's parasite research laboratory needs a small amount of electricity because the equipment used in the research is a small electricity user, and the reason why Salazar's castle needs such a small amount of electricity is that before Salazar felt the convenience of electricity, he replaced the candles with electric lights for my castle, and finally enjoyed it. Luo Guang walked out of the forest and returned to the road where the villagers walked out. The president's man is Luo Guang's mission target, but he is not a foreigner, so Luo Guang took out the intercom and pressed the call button. Salazar is a man with a big ambition and a twisted personality, but he has no special skills. Then Luo Guang continued to search the room and found a map of the surrounding area of the village and a clue about the president's man. It is the same as the church in the game of Resident Evil 4 that Lu Jing knew, but the area of the church is smaller than that of the church. Woof woof woof. Seeing Luo Guang, Dabai wagged his tail happily and shared the bad things he found with Luo Guang. And I came back from a laboratory under an isolated island with the latest parasite syringe. The place where the dog barked was where Dabai was hiding, and it was in the direction where the bone arrow was shot. It is certain that the 8-tentacle form is only half similar. Now the form of the parasite mutation in the hunter-villager is not similar at all, and even the ability is very similar. The bone blades under the 8 tentacles have been replaced with bone spurs, and the original baby face has been replaced with the face of a younger uncle, who looks resentful. For abnormal people, the church door is weak if there is no explosives, but for Luo Guang, this is a big deal. If the host is not completely brain dead, the parasite will immediately go down, occupy the hunter-villager's cerebellum, slowly absorb the remaining half of the host's energy, and mutate into a form suitable for survival in the body. Yan is by his side, and there are no cameras in such remote places, so Lu Jing naturally has no intention of hiding his ability. Ha, it's so similar to the corpse variant lurker under the Ishimura. Dabai nodded quickly, indicating that he would use his sensing ability to tell Luo Guang first. Before the two of them slowly finished off the wild deer, Luo Guang felt that his physical strength had not yet recovered to 40%, so he wiped his mouth and prepared to continue the action. Although Lu Jingning successfully built a power system with the financial support of Salazar, a small part of the power was used to supply Sadler's laboratory and Salazar's castle. Luo Guang frowned. I hate guys who act privately without communication. The man I caught will be locked outside the church and wait for the leader's order. While waiting, you must break the door of the church and keep the key outside the cave on the other side of the lake. The monsters outside will deal with stupid invaders. The church is one of the most important places in the Church of Light. The village chief, Barretos Mendez, often publishes the amount of tribute that the villagers need to pay in the latest quarter here, and decides the fate of the village according to the instructions of the leader Sadler. If I am sure that Yan is fighting here, I just need to press the call button back, and Luo Guang will naturally understand that Yan is still alive and I am busy. 8 hunter villagers raised their hunting knives low and jumped up to chop at Luo Guang. The photo was taken by the enemy, so Lu Jing didn't show it to Dabai Wen, but put it away. So Sadler contacted Salazar by phone, asking Salazar to send someone to deal with the invaders and send fewer people to guard the president's man. Luo Guang glanced at the conspicuous white hair under Dabai, took some dry grass from the ground and scattered it under Dabai. It knew that it had found food, so why did Luo Guang look depressed, as if he was angry about his own behavior? At the beginning, this church was a temple of faith for the villagers, but before Sadler came, it became a den for parasites to parasitize the villagers. Luo Guang, I joined the operation through the channel of the X organization, and my main task was to find and capture Ada, so I didn't have a photo of Ashley. Luo Guang rushed back to avoid the bone spurs, and at the same time pulled out the tangible Gurkha saber in front of his waist, and swung the knife in a bow step, sweeping away the parasites that had not yet landed with just one knife. That's not the accuracy of someone who hasn't received professional training. It's hard to change the direction of the attack before using that kind of attack method that jumps into the air, especially when the enemy is in a state of stiffness. It's used to decide the outcome with one strike. The clue is under a piece of paper, but because the villagers were taking a bath, the paper became very dirty, and few words were clear. Dabai's depressed look also put away his tongue and his tail drooped before seeing Luo Guang's serious expression. Before turning around and finishing off the villager's head who was stabbed in the chest by Luo Guang with a saber, Luo Guang walked towards Dabai. While thinking about showing Sci-Fi dog movies after returning to let it learn how to be a dog, Luo Guang continued to move forward. He had already seen the door of the church not far away. Before shooting that round, the 8 hunter villagers threw on the hunter shortbow directly, drew the hunting knives at their waists, followed by the other villagers, and rushed towards Lu Jing. Luo Guang was not waiting for that time. He put his hands together and clenched his fists. Electric arcs wrapped around his arms and electric lights appeared in his hands. The parasites in the hunter villagers felt the threat to their lives, and their reaction speed was slower than that of other special villagers. There were not many villagers guarding the door of the church, and there were not many villagers walking around in the large courtyard inside. It was obvious that those people were guarding something important outside the church. The 8 hunter villagers came back from hunting outside the mountain and were preparing to send the prey to the church to sacrifice to the Dark Lord. And we saw Luo Guang's arrogant look, so we threw the prey directly, drew the bow and arrow to attack Luo Guang. I was going to tell him about my finding the president's man, and asked him to meet at the village square. It was Luo Guang who had no doubts, because Luo Guang could not see the face in the photo. A white plastic bag was put under the head of the boy who fell to the ground. As for Luo Guang's ability to confirm the other party's gender, it was naturally because of the boy's figure and long legs in hi-fi in the photo. However, Sadler was there most of the time, outside the Research Institute of Plaka parasites, keeping a close eye on the latest research progress of parasites, so the village chief, Burritos, managed the village on a daily basis. Is that a photo of the president's man? Luo Guang found a photo of the president's man Ashley outside a room on the side of the church. 8 arrows again. These 8 hunters seemed to have given up and attacked Luo Guang again. The small door of the church was locked, and Luo Guang did not kick the door directly to retreat, but went around to confirm the terrain of the church first. Although Luo Guang did not shoot, the movement behind the church door did not alarm the villagers outside the church. A small group of people rushed out of the church aggressively and killed Luo Guang. Dabai. Before pressing the call button, Luo Guang did not speak, but released the call button 1 second ago, waiting for Luo Guang to press it again 8 seconds ago. Speaking of which, Lu Jing was envious when she saw that Wei Ang had picked up a Remington M870 shotgun from somewhere. It was because of kindness that she guessed that Wei Ang's 8 light talent was activated, so she didn't pick up a bad thing. Therefore, the first 8 arrows were not the hunter villagers struggling vigorously, but to cover the companions who were rushing towards Luo Guang. Pulling out a fist and kicking away, Luo Guang changed the palm shape of his hands, put his palms together, and inserted them vertically into the villager number 7, who followed closely. With the force of his arms, he directly divided the parasite and its parasitized villagers into 7. You understand what you mean, that's not the 8th rule. Lu Jing saw Dabai with his head high, his eyes looking down, as if he was reflecting, and confirmed it. Under Luo Guang's control, the electric dragon exploded directly before penetrating the crowd, with flashes of lightning, crackling, and killing all the villagers' cerebellums and parasites in their bodies. There was only one photo under Wyan, but I thought it was no different from the game, so I didn't ask Wyan to look at the photo. There might be no enemies outside the church, but the other party came out. This was probably a task to guard important items, so Luo Guang retreated and cleared the enemies before calling Dabai. As if he was driving away mosquitoes, Luo Guang looked at them and waved his hand heavily, and 8 bone arrows were hit to the ground by Lu Jing. Before solving the group of enemies, Lu Jing exhaled heavily. What Dabai found was a wild deer, a sacrifice thrown by these hunters to the dark cult. Luo Guang sensed Dabai's thoughts, sighed, and said, "He should have told you about his actions first." Lu Jing clenched her fists, pushed away the enemy's pitchfork with her right hand, and reached out with her left hand, inserted it into the enemy's chest behind her eyes, and crushed the parasites in his body. Luo Guang's plan failed. Dabai, who often starved, was not a foodie. Meow, those people can post pictures, it seems that they are posting Easter egg chapters, but I don't know why I can't find the button to post Easter egg chapters. Meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 245. Chapter 239. Goodbye Ada. Time goes back to 30 minutes ago. After passing the farm, Leon continued to move along the country road. Suddenly, there was a bang, and the sound of an explosion came from above. Leon did not look up to confirm the situation, but flew forward directly. A huge stone fell behind Leon, but the debris produced by the explosion splashed and hit Leon's back hard. Leon cursed and moved his body, and immediately stood up and rushed forward. This is because Leon is worried that the enemy has a backup plan, but explosives are also important to the villagers, so this is the only round. Ababa, Rub. 2 villagers jumped down from the high platform. These 2 villagers are the secret sentries arranged by the village chief. As long as there are guys who are not villagers passing by here, they will detonate the trap and smash the enemy to death with falling rocks. Okay, Wyan actually hoped that Luo Guang would answer his questions honestly, so it didn't matter. Wyan was not at all determined. He immediately stood up and turned around, raised his gun and fired. Wyan took a look at the surrounding environment and chose to retreat into the woods to find a place he wanted. The underground room was also where the villagers stored food. At the end of the underground room, Wyan saw something wrapped in a sack, which looked like a person from the length. You think you have changed too? After solving the first enemy, Wyan immediately drew his knife and pushed the villager away, aiming to hinder the attack of the 7th enemy. Wyan found a slightly more hidden place, then took off his jacket and laid it flat on the ground, then took out a roll of bandages, a pair of tweezers and a bottle of emergency spray from his waist bag and put them under his jacket. Don't move, as he said. Luo Guang picked up another gravel. In front of the tree that Wyan was aiming at, a figure walked out. Because after Wyan got the definite evidence, I was called back by my subordinates, and telling Hannigan about the matter with or without evidence would only make Hannigan, who was stubborn, fall into safety. Because in their expectation, the enemy would be shocked by the sudden explosion, or would look up to find the source of the explosion. That was also a true portrayal of Luo Guang's usual work. For you, what these buyers will do before getting the virus samples from you has nothing to do with you. Although he had not been with Weiang for a long time, Luo Guang answered very calmly, he has not changed at all, but he thought he had changed. The 7th villager chopped the sickle in his hand under the shoulder of the 1st villager. As soon as the voice fell, Wang heard Luo Guang laugh heavily. It's never the people who are right, but the tools in their hands. After dealing with the two enemies who ambushed him, Wang couldn't breathe a sigh of relief. There was a secret passage in front of the cabinet. Wang took out his weapon again, made a bad posture, and continued to retreat. But when Wang was about to untie the rope for the other party, he saw the other party looking forward with a face full of horror. Why am I here? Luo Guang took the tweezers and rescue spray from Wang's hand, looked at Wang's strong and tight front back, and carefully looked for the gravel embedded in Wang's front back. Wang took advantage of that time to go around the front of the enemy, stabbed the back to eliminate the parasites in the enemy's body, and then did not waste the pistol bullets. Wang pulled out the dagger and stabbed again to eliminate the seventh enemy. For example, when Wilf Arma developed the vaccine, it did carry out human experiments. Wang was not one of the investigators at the time, but I didn't tell Hannigan about it. This road is blocked by trees, so it can be seen from the satellite map. You may have wanted to go here before Wang told Claire his plan. Wang's body shook naturally, but he didn't make any sound. Leon turned around and fired 2 shots, hitting the enemy farther away from him, aiming to delay the enemy's attack on him. It looks like he doesn't have much to say. Wang's expression was not serious or resentful. The conversation with Luo Guang just now was still affecting my mood. His tone was also very weak, and he was going to apologize for his rough behavior just now. Claire looked at the real-time satellite map and said, "Vulture 1, there are many enemies here. When he comes here later, it's best to meet up with Vulture 7 first." After that, Zhang Ben turned around and left without waiting for Wang to reply. At this time, it was too late for the enemy to avoid the falling rocks. Suddenly, a voice came from Wang. Zhang Ben wore white long boots and white stockings with a red sweater and a tight skirt. It seemed that everything was to highlight the figure of the owner of the clothes. When Wang was with Ada, there seemed to be some changes. He often talked to himself, complaining about the mission or complaining about Zhang Ben's words. Since the other party was a woman, Wang had no choice but to be gentle with her. Moreover, the situation in that place was clear, and the enemy of the enemy might not be his friend, so Wang directly tore off the tape under the other party's mouth, but he did not untie the ropes that bound the other party's hands and feet. What about him? Has he changed? Or is he still the same as in Raccoon City, and he just wanted to use you that time? Wang raised his head. I was eager to know how the other party viewed me, but the words turned into questions to the other party when I got to my mouth. The other party was very disappointed when he heard what Wang said. It was hard to say whether it was because of the cigarettes or other reasons. The air outside was not a little turbid, but the strong firelight under the wall showed that the air outside was not breathable. It is certain that when I was taking off my lining just now, it was easy for Luo Guang to murder me. He simply needed to deceive me again. This chapter is not over yet, please click the next page to continue reading. Wang held the gun in his left hand, resting it on the wrist of his right hand holding the combat dagger in an ice cone style, and used the gun head to push the door open, and pushed a gap hard to confirm whether there was a trap installed in front of the door. Wang dodged the axe attack of the villagers sideways, and then stabbed the dagger in his left hand into the chest of the villagers to eliminate the parasites in the enemy's body. Luo Guang, who had been smiling since he saw Wang finish, put away his smile, just like you in a long time later, with an expression on his face, looking very cold. But that expression flashed by and then turned back to a smiling expression. Pushing away the wheelbarrow with the cow carcass blocking the road, Wang walked across the shaky wooden bridge and arrived at the location of the manor in a while. Wien S. Kennedy. Luo Guang. It was wrapped tightly, but it was also eye-catching. It was usually the absolute area between the long boots and the short skirt wrapped in white stockings. Do you need help? Just like this time in Raccoon City. Looking at Wien, who had lost his immature face, Luo Guang asked again. It's just that the environment is not a little dark, so Wian needs to pay more attention to the situation on his feet to prevent stepping into the enemy's trap. Zhang Ben pulled out the gravel in front of Wian's back, and then sprayed the wound with a slow relief spray. But what was exposed from the outside was a woman's head, with her mouth sealed with tape. When she saw Wian, she immediately hummed, and seemed very unhappy. After preparation, Wian took off the lining, holding tweezers in one hand and touching the front with the other hand. The purpose was to confirm the location of the wound and then pick out the gravel outside the wound. Although I knew the reason why the enemy chopped the door on the ground, in order to avoid missing clues, I decided to go up and take a look. After all, that kind of underground room looks like a place where people hide. When Wian learned from Ada that Zhang Ben was also in that area, he thought about what to say to Luo Guang when he met him, but I knew his name from what he said. In addition to the anti-biochemical village, Wian also performed many other tasks in the name of actual combat training, and understood many white scenes. Oh, thank you. Wian really found it difficult to deal with the wound on his back. After struggling, he could only accept Zhang Ben's bad intentions. At the end, Wian saw that no villager was facing away from him, holding an axe in his hand, swinging it up and down, and chopping down the wooden board on the ground. There were no enemies blocking the road, but there were few in number, and they were dealt with by Wian nervously. The wound on his back healed slowly before spraying the slow relief spray. Although it didn't hurt or itch, it didn't affect his movements. The sound seemed to come from under the tree. The iron gate at the entrance had not fallen to the ground yet. Wian saw that there was no fire outside the manor, so he tensed up and took out the combat dagger. Take it. In Raccoon City, Luo Guang also bandaged the wound of Wian, who was shot. However, the other party was also moved before being hit by the bullet, just like the tyrant Wian saw in Raccoon City. As soon as the body relaxed, the pain in the back ended and emerged, making Wian frown, but it was better to stay here for a long time. The explosion was known to attract more enemies. The inner wall of the manor was covered with plants such as creepers and moss. It had not been taken care of for a long time. Yes, Wian, I want to accept it, but I am worried that I will be used by Luo Guang again. Finally able to speak, the other party took a small breath and said, "He is right, brother. By the way, did he bring cigarettes?" Wrapping the bandage around the smaller part of the wound, Wian put on his old clothes and equipment again and set off again. When he said that, the other party looked at Wian expectantly. "Bad, I'll help you untie it first," but at least Wian looked like an enemy, so the other party asked Wian to rescue himself first. The manor was very shabby outside. Wian heard the sound of someone knocking on the wooden board, and the sound was intermittent, so Wian quickly confirmed the location of the sound. Without any hesitation, Wian took out his gun and turned around when the sound came, aiming at a tree in front of him. "Do you need your help?" First, he confirmed that there were no enemies around, and then Wian put away his weapon and used both hands to push the cabinet open. In fact, Wian wanted to push the cabinet open with one hand, but I was afraid of alerting the enemy. If I pushed with both hands, I wanted to push it down more calmly, let the cabinet slightly off the ground and push it to the side. "Smoke more, smoking harms people," Wian answered seriously. It was a one-way street with rooms on both sides, but there were shelves full of sundries, and the end was a dead end. "It has nothing to do with him." Luo Guang picked up the smallest piece of gravel carefully. Luo Guang smiled and waited for Wian's question. Wian walked towards the sound carefully and found that the sound seemed to come from the front of a cabinet. "Eagle's Nest, have you found the road to the lakeside settlement?" Wian saw two road signs under the road, one with lake and the other with manor. Hiss. Before dealing with the enemy, Wian looked at the ground and stepped on the place where the villagers cut a few times. Before confirming that it was hollow, I cut the wooden planks nailed together below with the villagers' axes, and then opened the ground door. That was what Wyan was most worried about. Wyan wanted to turn around and look into Luo Guang's eyes to ask, but was pressed back by Luo Guang. Wei Ang, who turned his head, wanted to chase after me, but he stopped moving because I didn't have my own mission yet, and I doubted that the two of them would meet again. Ouch, it hurts, you know. The other person's first sentence was not to complain that Wei Ang's action of tearing off the tape just now was too rough. I felt like the beard under my face was pulled up. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. This is to stagger the attacks of the two enemies, allowing Leon to turn a one-on-two fight into two one-on-one battles. When Claire received the communication from Wei Ang, she thought that she had encountered some thoughts again, but she thought that the information she was told later was correct. Could it be the mission goal of that time? Wei Ang was secretly happy. Thinking that it was not Ashley outside the sack, I immediately went over and untied the rope at the mouth of the sack. But the wound was on the front of his back, so the operation was a big challenge for Wei Ang. Vulture 7 does not refer to Ada. In that state now, when Wei Ang saw Luo Guang's face, he felt even worse and said, "You want to ask him if you have nothing to do." Unlike in the game, they choose to detonate when the enemy reaches directly underneath the trap. The sound of cutting the floor covered up the sound of Wei Ang's approaching footsteps. When the villager didn't notice, Wei Ang had not stabbed the parasite's position with his knife, and then killed the villager with another knife. With a thud, Wei Ang's head hit the support column and he passed out easily. Although Wei Ang's right hand was Wei Ang's dominant hand, the special agent training also included special training on how to use a gun and a knife with his right hand for that situation. In order to prevent Wei Ang from misdirecting the shot, he still put the pistol directly on the villager's chin. Then the trigger was pulled. The outer space was narrow and had a dead end. Wei Ang was quickly pushed into a dead end, and then he was grabbed by the neck and thrown under the wall by this tyrant-like enemy. Therefore, Wei Ang left the wound on his front and back to the other party to deal with, but he was very relaxed in his heart, so his muscles remained tense. Okay, Wei Ang also planned to obtain less information from the other party, but the situation outside was obviously a suitable place. Luo Guang looked at Wei Ang, who was sitting upright, and with a bit of mischief in mind, he pulled out a piece of gravel without any warning. Received the contact was to tell Claire about the incident, and then Wei Ang hung up the call. The current situation is different from when he sneaked and killed before, but the method is the same. In order to protect Shirley and Hannigan, the Presidential Intelligence Service, which valued Wei Ang's ability, made a legally agreed request to Wei Ang, to join us. Before finishing the treatment, Luo Guang bent down and threw the tweezers and rescue spray to the men behind Wei Ang, and then said in Wei Ang's ear, "Does he think you have changed?" "What, but did you see there is no road in the satellite image?" "He probably doesn't have much to say." Wei Ang exposed his front and back to Zhang Bin, not because of his conditional trust in Luo Guang, but because I was not aware of the other party's existence at all after Luo Guang spoke out. After the trip mine trap on the farm and the falling stone plan just now, Wei Ang dared to ignore the enemy's IQ and became more cautious with every step. But as long as Wei Ang is alone, I will fall into deep thought and confusion, because becoming a direct agent of the president of the lighthouse country is not Wei Ang's voluntary choice. Before the Raccoon City incident, the world had undergone huge changes. If you want to save one person, you may have to sacrifice fewer people. Luo Guang's action of pulling out the gravel just now interrupted Wei Ang's thinking, and I was thinking about how to speak. The reason why I didn't think it was someone else's was because the sack was swinging constantly on the ground, and it looked like no one was tied outside the sack. My injury was considered minor, but Wei Ang decided to treat the bad wound first to avoid infection and inflammation. Wei Ang wanted to discuss the issue of the balance of life and try his best to save the people he could save. This was enough for Wei Ang. Meow, after the battle in the village square, it's basically a magic reform plot, meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 246. Chapter 240 Rescue Ashley. Leon did not respond to Luo Guang's code, which made Luo Guang's face change a little. The situation here is quite different from the Resident Evil 4 he played, which made him a little worried about Leon's current situation. If Leon was just knocked unconscious by the village chief like in the plot of the game, the situation would be acceptable. Luo Guang is now worried that Leon has encountered other accidents. The code agreed by Luo Guang and Leon will make a rustling sound, similar to the sound of wind blowing through the woods. But if Leon is captured by the villagers or defeated by the villagers, there should be an enemy who gets the walkie-talkie. Remember the domain name of this site, Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. In order to catch the intruder's companion, there should be a response or other temptation. Shaking his head, Luo Guang decided to focus on the current matter first. He couldn't go back to find Leon when he was at the door of the church. It was not difficult to find Leon. He had already smeared tracking pheromones on Leon, so it was easy to track Leon afterwards. As long as Leon was still alive, he could save him. So Luo Guang had to prepare a tube of rebirth number 1 in advance, ready to give Leon an injection at any time. Luo Guang, who was carrying a backpack, could naturally carry more things. I understand, your name is, yes, he knows your name. Ashley said she understood. Luo Guang had never seen any electronic devices in that area, and with the color that the boy hated, Luo Yi concluded that it was the president's mobile phone. After all, in Dabai's view, such a weak wolf king was defeated by those guys, so how could it, a lone wolf, deal with those enemies? Luo Guang didn't say anything and directly dealt with the 2 villagers who were chasing Dabai all the way. Even a special person can go directly to the 7th floor by finding a wooden ladder. The explosive insects will be troublesome, but Luo Guang, like Wyan, has mastered the method of dealing with those guys. This time, he will first solve the parasites in the enemy's body. Looking at Dabai following him, Luo Guang asked it to smell the smell under the phone. Luo Guang pressed the power button, but the phone did not respond. The mechanism is still missing a blue dial, but I have no intention of looking for the blue dial. Ashley nodded like a chicken pecking at rice and replied, listen to him. Although those villagers are hunters, Dabai smelled a similar smell under us. Thank you. Ashley hugged Dabai tightly to her chest and replied. Luo Yi did not interrupt Ashley's crying, let go of her hand, and stopped thinking about how to take Ashley and Dabai away. Dabai thought he was sold to the man who was hugging him tightly. Hearing Luo Guang's words, he was relieved and barked in a low mood, accepting Luo Guang's task. Being blessed is a blessing, Luo Guang looked at Dabai with envy. Dabai is hateful, but it seems to be useless according to the current situation. Hot and quiet. Syringes and disposable needles are now one of the standard equipment that Luo Guang carries with him, so Luo Guang immediately began to make them. It is probably not that the enemies were not eating bad food, so the lower limit is a little lower than that of the villagers, but it is still within the limit of human beings. After preparation, Luo Guang jumped up, protected his head with both arms, and knocked open the stained glass above the main entrance of the church, and broke into the interior of the church. Coming to the 7th floor, in fact, it was not the side that Luo Guang knocked back. I looked left and right and found that there was no darker color under the ground on one side. If it must have been taken away by these villagers, the chair should be rotten like that, and the rope would also be left outside. You were sent by his father, Luo Guang repeated heavily, holding Ashley's shoulders with both hands. At the same time, a pheromone that could not calm people also quickly drifted away. Luo Guang looked at Dabai and decided to teach him a lesson before the incident. Since Dabai didn't have that talent, I could let Dabai waste his talent. Woof woof. Dabai's cry for help came from the front. Yeah, a boy's tender cry came from the door. Ha, Ashley threw a brick at Luo Guang, and at the same time rushed to Luo Guang, trying to take the opportunity to rush out. After putting his head down again, the clues found outside the room on the side of the church were enough to prove that Ashley was on the 7th floor of the church. Awoof, Dabai, who almost forgot to bark, called for help. Woof woof, that was Dabai expressing his gratitude to Luo Guang. Since the explosive insects were so troublesome, Luo Guang solved these parasites first. But it was a pity that Luo Guang didn't bring tissues and handkerchiefs under him. I could always take out gauze and hand it to him to wipe his tears. The first thing that caught his eye was a chair that was smashed into pieces and 2 ropes, which made Luo Guang know that people had been imprisoned there. The communicator is only under me, and the wooden bridge you want to leave the area is still broken, so you can only find me and let me contact the helicopter, Luo Guang said quickly, and told Ashley the reason in detail. The villagers who were praying did not carry farm tools, so we all relied on using our teeth to attack, like beasts. Really? There was no lock on the iron door. Luo Guang directly broke it, and then pushed the door hard. Of course, there was another very important point. Dabai, who remained quiet, told Luo Yi through his sensing ability when he opened the door that the smell in front of the door was very strong. No one came to rescue him that time. You and I searched for his traces separately, but I lost contact after a long time. We left together before you found me. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. So before Dabai rushed out of the stool, his first instinct was to look for Luo Yi for shelter. Dabai was panting and seemed to be at ease, which made Luo Guang feel that Dabai's big body contained a small amount of strength. He showed you bad, Ashley. Luo Guang then used his sensing ability to assign the task to Dabai. When Dabai retreated and saw that no one was attacking Luo Guang, his hair immediately stood on end, he made a guttural sound, and assumed a fighting posture, waiting for Luo Guang's order to come forward. None of the new enemies have leaders wearing red robes, so they are probably not our leaders. Ashley was wearing something like a school uniform, an orange woolen shirt paired with a darker orange suit lining, a patterned scarf, and a dark green plaid skirt. But Ashley obviously didn't doubt Luo Guang, a person she had never seen before. She looked at the open door behind Luo Guang, and you secretly made up your mind. Ashley, who was still struggling to escape Luo Guang's claws after the end, was breathing slowly due to the violent exercise. Before hearing Luo Guang's words, Ashley looked at Luo Guang. There was no communication barrier between Luo Guang and Dabai, so Dabai couldn't just lay off his job. Sniffing the residual smell in the air, he took Luo Guang behind an iron door. Those enemies and special villagers have the same basic physical abilities as the villagers except for their weapons. Luo Yi also introduced Wei Ang by the way, so that obstruction pair would not encounter Wei Ang before running around and think that Wei Ang was a good person. Dabai jumped from Luo Guang's arms to the ground and curiously looked at the villagers who were surrounding him. The men sent by Salazar all wore white hooded robes with the leader's emblem embroidered under the robes. They held crossbows in their hands and walked back menacingly. As for the borrowed shoulder thing, I can only apologize, it's not an exclusive position yet. Dabai was hiding on the bench when he was startled by the villager who suddenly bent over to look at the top of the bench. He immediately kicked his thighs and rushed out from the top of the bench. It was a bad thing to wait for his orders, but Luo Yi always felt that Dabai was not suspected of pretending to be powerful, and deliberately hid in front because he dared to repeat the trick. Specialized training of dogs by humans to track scent lessens that ability while allowing the dog to understand the trainer's commands and learn how to report findings to the trainer. Normally speaking, Luo Guang should pass a tissue to Ashley at this time or lend her a shoulder. Rejing, calm down, you are the person sent by his father. Luo Yi tried to use the name of the other party's father to make him recover. Luo Guang jumped under the bench and rushed towards the new enemy. Luo Yi picked up Dabai, then used his legs to control his strength, and jumped directly to the 7th floor. He complained, by the way, that kind of hollow design is of no use blocking the stairs. Luo Guang did not think that the mobile phone was dropped on the ground when Ashley was taken away from the church. Since the positioning device was found, it meant that the enemy had searched her head. Luo Yi's ears moved and he heard Dabai's cry for help. Just as he was about to turn around, he saw someone opening the small door of the church. It was the guard sent by Salazar. Luo Guang took a step back, which made Ashley even more excited. With tears in her eyes, she grabbed something and threw it towards Luo Guang. Seeing Luo Guang stop, the two villagers rushed towards Luo Guang, but were instantly avoided by Luo Guang. "Hide yourself," Luo Guang asked Dabai to hide himself, then drew his sword and rushed towards the villagers. Ashley didn't answer. After being hit on the head, Luo Guang grabbed Ashley without any increase in HP. Because of being too relaxed, Ashley was able to make bad judgments. You never noticed that Luo Guang was not dressed the same as the villagers, and that he was chattering local slang. Looking at Dabai's innocent eyes, Luo Guang pushed Dabai back into Ashley's arms. The stairs to the 7th floor were separated by 2 iron gates. Luo Guang found that there was no mechanism under one wall. When he pulled it up like a switch, he saw a closed box in the center of the church being opened. Below there are 2 green and red rotating discs with the dark cult emblem. The stone guard rail was easily smashed into pieces by Luo Yi, who watched Luo Yi fall to the ground on the 1st floor of the church. As for that being Ada's mobile phone, Luo Yi thought that was very possible. "You are Ashley Graham." The other party's appearance was not the same as in his game memory, so Luo Guang confirmed. Luo Guang still had no impression of that mechanism. At that time, he had passed the test after getting stuck. She looks more mature in every aspect, and Ashley has changed from a low school student to an elementary school student. As for avenging his mother, Luo Yi inadvertently killed Dabai's enemy. After solving the problem, Luo Guang ended the search in that area. Although the guardrail is made of stone, the gaps between the stones have become smaller and smaller due to its age and lack of routine maintenance. At the moment Luo Guang nodded, Ashley started crying. Luo Guang reacted quickly and grabbed the metal lampstand that the other party smashed towards him. "Is that the president's son's cell phone?" As for Dabai, he was lucky enough to escape a disaster because he lived among wolves, but that also imprinted in his mind the idea of staying away from the villagers. "Ashley Graham, is he there?" Luo Guangda walked away cautiously, followed closely by Dabai. What is different from what Luo Guang expected? If there is a plot after the other party comes up, there will be a plot. While he is still calm and the church has been cleaned up by himself, Luo Guang looked up at Ashley and said, "The next journey will be difficult. You need him to disobey your instructions, communicate and discuss, understand?" This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. The place where the mobile phone was found was in a corner of the 7th floor, which means that the president's man has been to that place. You can only regard Luo Guang as a life-saving straw now. Not all the villagers ran to Luo Guang, but 2 villagers seemed to be attracted by Dabai's conspicuous white hair and ran towards Dabai. Ashley finally came up after the heat, and her tense nerves relaxed. Looking at Ashley with a relaxed face and no fear, Luo Yi directly picked up Dabai. "Your name is Luo Guang, and your companion is Wian S. Kennedy." Ashley's father and Simmons also know each other, so without Ashley as a base, even if Ada is caught, Simmons should still vent his anger on himself. "That's Dabai, a newly adopted dog, who was also rescued from these good people." Luo Guang planned to use the fluffy tactics to appease Ashley's mentality. The force of Luo Guang's jump was a bit strong. "After breaking the glass, I also crashed down the stone guardrail on the 7th floor. But Luo Guang didn't have that idea and didn't blame Ashley. As a boy who had to worry about food and clothing, he was suddenly kidnapped and didn't react quickly. The price of those enemies' bodies becoming weak is not to implant parasites in their bodies, and before the parasites kill the host first, the host will also recover its consciousness, but will cause the body to collapse and eventually die due to the loss of the parasites. Don't come over. The other party tried to take back the metal lampstand, but was held tightly by Luo Guang. Dabai has learned how to track prey by smell, which is one of its survival instincts. Luo Guang walked over and picked it up. It was a pink flip-cover Motorola mobile phone, and the screen was not broken. You will send him home safely. Luo Guang finished speaking, and Ashley nodded. Luo Guang just dodged the garbage thrown over to give face to the other party, but now seeing that Ashley seemed to want to run, I dodged again. Ashley saw that there was a way to take back the weapon, so she immediately let go, moved forward, and said softly again, "Don't let him come." "Can I just send you away first?" Ashley said, wiping her tears with a scarf. The entire mobile phone was not specifically broken, which means that the positioning device under Ashley was not installed outside the mobile phone. So Luo Yi flipped in the air to avoid the enemy's crossbow, and then took advantage of the crossbowman's bullets to retreat from the enemy group and killed the guy in the red robe with a knife. Its mother and the wolf pack it once belonged to were not killed by hunters outside the village. It is possible that there are no villagers outside the church. Meow. In the remake, Ashley was very scared when she first saw Leon, but she became docile after running out and even asked Leon questions. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 247. Chapter 241. Louise Sarah. Luo Guang and Ashley were ready, and they pushed the door open and set off. Ashley didn't hold Xiaobai tightly, but held him in her arms for a while before putting him down, and then followed Luo Guang closely. The two came to the second floor window that Luo Guang had broken, and Ashley found that it was raining outside. The rain was not heavy at this time, but Luo Guang looked at the sky, which was covered with dark clouds, and it seemed that a storm was brewing. It seemed that the storm was coming. Luo Guang shifted his gaze downward, and heard Ashley say, "What is that?" There was a little firelight swaying where Ashley's little finger pointed, and Luo Guang could clearly see through the rain that it was a large group of villagers. "The villagers who kidnapped you." Luo Guang answered Ashley's words, and he needed to let Ashley know who the enemy was. Ashley wondered why these people who sounded peaceful would kidnap her, villagers. But when I was kidnapped, they were clearly a group of mercenaries. Luo Guang asked Ashley to hide behind the stone wall next to the broken window like himself, and not to stand directly in the middle of the window. The Church of Light, the villagers and mercenaries are all members of this section, Luo Guang answered while looking at the situation outside. Señorita means ugly girl in Spanish. Both of their legs were not locked. Wyan turned around and stood up easily, and Chi Yuan also stood up with the help of the force and was pulled up by Wyan. In Luo Guang's opinion, I am still too powerful now and can't do things as I please, unless I use the T Veronica virus to control all the people who can't be used, but that follows Luo Guang's principles, or in other words, follows Jill's wishes. The voice outside the dream is so real that Wyan's ears seem to be echoing with this sentence before waking up. Wyan woke up from a nightmare. The headache made Ashley unable to answer Luo Guang's words. It was not until the broadcast in her head stopped and the tinnitus disappeared that Ashley looked up at Luo Guang. Luo Guang replied, "He's waiting for you outside. Dabai has bad eyes for you. It's okay to call you. He's a bastard." Louis stood up and complained, "If you want to stay with him. Guess again, is the person he is looking for the missing señorita? Hey, don't move." All my equipment was placed under a table, not a single piece was left, and the first piece of equipment that Wyan picked up was my jacket. There was something in the way, so he couldn't fire at full power anymore. Dark Church? What is our purpose? Threaten your father to do something for us. He's in trouble. The kitchen knife was inserted into the villager's neck. Combined with Lewis's reaction just now, Wyan felt that Lewis knew about the parasites and seemed to know how to deal with those villagers. He couldn't just stab the neck directly, but stab the chest and shoot the head. Then Lewis held the chain with both hands, walked forward, and said, "Yes, come on, we seem to have dragged someone to the old church again." Both sides gave way to each other and pulled the chain. As soon as Lewis finished speaking, Wyan exerted his strength and finally pulled up the pulley device. After speaking, Luo Guang jumped directly to the first floor, pulled out his special knife, and waited for the villagers to push the door in. Wyan, I am a researcher or scientist, so I didn't go into it, and pushed open an iron door. You don't have any ideas, but now is the time to tell him. Luo Guang looked at Ashley worriedly. Whether the enemy was killed or not, it seems that Lewis went in another direction, and it is possible that Lewis's trace was lost so slowly. But Luo Guang is not the kind of person who likes to show all his strength when he sees an enemy, so it doesn't matter. The headlights can only illuminate a large part of the room. Just as Wyan and the other two were talking, a villager with an axe had not retreated yet, and he was about to start Chi Yawan's life with an axe. Therefore, for the mission to save Ashley, the president chose Wyan, who had a little or no ordinary background, to join the direct agents. Dabai didn't bark, and nodded. "Who is the guy who knocked you out?" Wyan recalled what happened after he fell into a coma, and asked while pulling the chain hard. This place was exactly the direction chosen by Luo Guang. Wyan considered Luo Guang's combat effectiveness and thought that if Ashley was really in this place, Luo Guang might not have successfully rescued the mission target. Just like the battle in the village square, even if Leon was not around, Luo Guang had to fight with the enemy in various ways first, in order to confirm the enemy's combat effectiveness and collect enough intelligence. Wyan and Lewis exerted force on both sides at the same time, and directly broke the villager's neck with the chain. Except for the lighthouse agent who protected Ashley, your elementary school classmates, including teachers, all knew your true identity, so Ashley's kidnapping also explained a problem, that there was a traitor in the lighthouse. Looking at Luo Guang holding her arms, Ashley blushed slightly, thinking that the distance between them was not too close, and said, "You heard a sound." The villager staggered after being hit, and Wyan and Lewis took the opportunity to rush down, exchange positions, and tied the villager's neck with an iron chain, but the villager was very strong, and the two of them worked together to control the restless villager. "You want to hide it from him, but now is the time to talk." Luo Guang pointed to the window. Wyan held an axe in his left hand and a kitchen knife in his right hand, and saw a villager patrolling outside the room. "Your name is Wyan." Wyan only said his name, and did not answer Lewis' previous question. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Wyan looked at the rusty kitchen knife in his hand, and he didn't know whether they had that method, but it was worth a try. As for Luo Guang, without Simmons, who was dedicated to serving the country, the president would naturally agree. Although Wyan did not answer Lewis' question about whether he was a lighthouse countryman, Lewis made his own judgment. "I saw what Wyan was doing, holding the chain tightly with both hands, and said, 'Guess, he is here to find someone.' After you were arrested, you heard us say that we were going to take this girl away. It was obvious that the two had only met for a short time, but they had a tacit understanding. After looking at each other, the two held the chain and threw it at the villager, hitting him in the face. Seeing the other party cooperate so well, Wyan loosened the chain, moved away. Where did you go?" Although Chi Yawan wanted to ease the atmosphere, Wyan did not appreciate it. The topic that the other party found was far worse than Luo Guang's, which aroused Wyan's desire to complain, so Wyan paid attention to the other party's topic and looked at the chain connecting the two. Lewis smiled and spread his hands. "Goodbye, friend. The lost lamb escaped, I give you salvation." The iron handcuffs key fell within Wyan's range of activities, and I knew that it was Lewis who did it on purpose. I wanted to answer Wyan's question because it involved my identity. But that would obviously make Ashley give up asking. That's because something happened to your body, he can hide it from you. In a one-on-one situation, Wyan, who attacked by surprise, took the advantage and tried Lewis's approach. Wyan rushed over when the enemy turned his back to him, and inserted a kitchen knife into the enemy's neck, cutting off the spinal nerves in the enemy's neck. Does he know what's going on? That's bad. Ashley touched her chest with her delicate hands. You were worried that you had implicated your father. When you heard Luo Guang's words, you felt a little relieved. Holding the villager's axe, Wyan left the room and walked along the road, retreating cautiously. In front of Dexon, while Lewis was out of the enemy's attack range, Wyan explained why he had just done that. I didn't find any trace of Lewis, but at a corner, Wyan saw the body of a villager and took a kitchen knife from under the body. So thinking, Wyan's primary goal now is not to survive, but in order to survive, I must first get my equipment back. I don't know the location of the equipment yet, it's in the next room. There is no hole in the wall of that room, but unfortunately there is no steel bar to block it, so I can only go around. Those villagers infected by parasites, even if they have no self-consciousness, can't get rid of the control-type parasites on their own, and that's a lifetime thing. After calming down, Wyan looked up and found that his hands were handcuffed, and all the weapons and equipment under him were taken away by the enemy, even his inner jacket was spared. Wyan, who woke up, moved his body, and heard the sound of metal collision under his head. A female voice with ups and downs appeared in Ashley's mind. If Wyan shouted Daxon, it would not be too late, so I had to do it to save Lewis. Only by knowing yourself and the enemy can you win every battle. Before, Luo Guan could deal with these villagers with ease, and he could not solve the enemy with 8 or 7 out of 7. Can you not mention this embarrassing thing? Your name is Louis Serra, and what about him? A lighthouse countryman. Although Lewis did not finish his words, I at least got a clue from Lewis' mouth. Ashley might be in the old church. Are you okay? Seeing Ashley covering her head in a very dignified manner, Kia immediately went to check on Ashley's condition, and pulled you to the side away from the window to avoid exposing the two people's position. Lewis was answered by the sound of Wyan pulling the chain again. Sacrificed lamb. You will be granted our most holy body, and it will end. These villagers who were just passing by were holding torches and approaching the church. It is easy to expose strength, so Kia must first understand her enemies, so as not to capsize in the ditch, expose her strength, and reveal her cards too early. The room is big, and there is not even a rare big electric light. The Plaka parasite does not have the same ability as the T. Veronica virus, and can control the infected people of the upper level, but the control weakness of the parasite is weaker than Kia's T. Veronica virus. Wyan also discovered the situation and was about to rush to Lewis, but was restricted by the iron chain pressed by the corpse. Wyan didn't say anything, but before confirming that the other party had left, he immediately went down to pick up the key. Luo Guang, I have absorbed a lot of viruses, but I always feel that I have no enemies in that world. No matter how much the virus is weakened, I can only block small caliber bullets now, and I can avoid bullets to a certain extent, but I will definitely face a hail of bullets. What are you going to do? Ashley asked in a high voice. There was no chain connecting the handcuffs in the middle, and Wyan didn't care about what was going on. What's going on? As he said that, Wyan exerted force with both hands and pulled his hands up. When Wei Ang saw that the opponent was incapacitated, he also had a last-ditch attack, because axes and kitchen knives were both easy to use. My current equipment was not good at dealing with the parasites that exploded, so I had to quickly get back my original equipment. Ashley told Luo Guang what she heard, but Chi Ya didn't reply and looked at the villagers in the window. There are rooms with reinforced concrete structures outside, so if Wei Ang had to guess where he was, I would choose an abandoned factory, because there is only one place in that area that is made of reinforced concrete. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. The iron chain was fixed under the pulley device of the beam, and it didn't seem to be reliable, so Wyan tried to pull the pulley device violently, but we could only move in that area. Lewis, who was moving forward, was steady and landed on his butt, making a sound of pain. As soon as it was over, you thought we kidnapped him to threaten the president, make certain political demands or release certain key prisoners. But as of the time you set off, we have not contacted his father. That was Wei Ang teasing Lewis. The enemy was brought down, but this villager did not die directly like the one he encountered later. As soon as the villager's neck was broken, he fell to the ground. With that said, Lewis, who looked serious, threw the key to the side of the room and walked out slowly. There was a voice in front of Wei Ang, and I realized that I was leaning against another person, and the voice was not unfamiliar at all. Ashley looked inside and was about to ask Luo Guang a question when a voice suddenly appeared outside her head, accompanied by a headache. Is he the person who was packed in a sack later? Wei Ang confirmed. Ashley looked in the direction Luo Guang was pointing. The villagers had walked outside the churchyard. The two of them were very close to each other. Wei Ang stared closely at Lewis, who had his hands pulled up, and said, "Tell him what he knows." To be honest, as the commander-in-chief of that mission, Simmons couldn't directly let Luo Guang join the mission without telling the president, but it was necessary. Ashley, although you are the president's son, you are still in elementary school, so you have not received very little political knowledge, but you still know the importance of your identity, so you have been hiding your status as president since you were in elementary school. Male identity. The defense there was weaker than Wei Ang imagined. In several one-on-one battles, Wei Ang had failed even though he was injured. But after I tried several times, these villagers were just incapacitated and died as Toru and banelings. Lewis didn't say anything to Wei Ang's rough movements, and simply said, "You say it?" Wei Ang pulled Lewis towards him hard, causing Lewis to fall down again and eat a mouthful of ashes. "It's bad, he loves to talk." Lewis waited for Wei Ang to answer, then continued, "Do you think he and you got the wrong vacation destination? Don't forget that Luo Guang is popular among these careerists, so unless he has no choice, Luo Guang will expose his full strength easily." "Boy," Wei Ang grabbed the chain and pulled Lewis behind him. Wei Ang was worried that the villager would have baneling bugs, so he did not get down immediately and wanted to pick up the axe, but Lewis rushed down without determination, got the key to the iron cuffs from the villager's waist, and unlocked himself of iron shackles. "Who knows? You were caught before." Lewis moved his wrist and replied casually. Lewis immediately got up, and when he turned around, he realized that it was Wei Ang who saved his life. "Meow, I have received a lot of votes in the past 2 days. Thank you for double monthly votes at the end of the month." Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 248. Chapter 242 Allies. There are not many villagers in the factory, and the scale of the factory is not small, which gives Leon room to operate. At least he will not be beaten to death by a group of villagers gathered in a room. Leon doesn't have a map of this factory, but at least he knows how to leave. Just go to the first floor for a few laps. Soon he found a double door with a sign saying exit above the door, which should be the exit. There's just a lock on the door, and it doesn't look like it can be opened with an axe or a bullet. This lock is locked in the factory, which means that the key should be in the possession of the villagers in the factory. You may need to go back and search one by one. Just make up for them. Leon turned and left, but although he made a small discovery after walking around, he did not find the key or any other way out. Leon, who returned to the exit gate, was thinking of a solution when he heard the sound coming from outside the double door. Leon immediately raised his gun, while keeping an eye on the direction of the double doors. he moved behind the pillar to find cover. But the person outside the door did not open the door. Instead, he threw a paper ball in from the iron fence above the door. Then, there were footsteps outside the door, and the sound became smaller and smaller. Leon looked at the paper ball that fell on the ground with a strange look on his face, and walked over cautiously. As soon as that thought came to your mind, you immediately blushed and buried your head in your chest. Ashley's voice was not loud. Fortunately, Luo Guang's hearing was relatively sharp and he still caught the other person's words, so Luo Guang nodded and continued to retreat with Ashley. After exhaling, Luo Guang walked to the center of the church and looked up at Ashley and Dabai. It was drizzling inside the door, but Wei Ang did not dare to wait for the rain to stop. He walked out of the factory and looked at the tin shed next door. Wei Ang saw that the villagers who passed by the villa did not retreat, but walked in a roundabout way towards the valley. He breathed a sigh of relief and was about to push the door to leave. Suddenly, his intuition sounded the alarm for me, and a shadow quietly enveloped me. Lived myself. Bad. Luo Guang was standing in Ashley's blind spot, which prevented Caog from slowing down the enemy. Before continuing to retreat, Wei Ang came to a valley, where villagers had built various rooms and wooden bridges in a three-dimensional manner. Woof, Dabai wagged his tail and asked Luo Guang for credit. The above is in Spanish, but when Leon got the equipment back, he had Hannigan's assistant to translate it for him. Hannigan slowly confirmed the situation and said, Vulture number 7 is located in the church area. There are no villagers surrounding this area. There should be a fight. That's the key to the small door. There's no gift from you in the door yet. Respect from his allies. Wei Ang read the translated words and asked Cao's Haifeng, Eagle Nest, you don't have any allies in that area. The enemies fell to the ground and piled up, taking a step back to hinder the retreat of the villagers. As Ashley watched, the villager who came down the ladder was just about to reach the 7th floor when Bimax, like a white comet, crashed into the villager's chest, knocking the enemy up. Wei Ang picked up the Springfield rifle and finished checking the condition of the weapon. For weapons whose origins are known and have passed through other people's hands, it is worse to confirm the condition once. Opening the paper ball, there was a key wrapped inside. Leon did not rush to confirm the purpose of the key, but first confirmed the meaning of the words on the paper ball. It must have been Sadler's failure. Wei Ang, who had killed so many villagers, had his neck cut off long ago. After being lifted up by the neck, Wei Ang, whose head was not deprived of oxygen, only had time to see a blurry red figure before the village chief let go and put him up, then fell to the ground. Hannigan nodded in refusal and said, although the other party says that he is an ally, he still needs to be cautious. Can the satellite images reveal any clues? Wei Ang put the note away. You're in trouble. Ashley beat the villagers, and the fear in her heart faded a lot. There was a trickle of sweat on her forehead, and she answered Caog with a smile. Although it is not equipped with a low magnification scope, the accuracy of the Springfield rifle at long distances is much worse than that of Wyan's other two guns, and the enemy outside the valley is only about 70 meters away, and Wyan's the shooting level is good and the machine sight is adequate. Because of that, I didn't immediately try to open the door and leave. Instead, I first checked the situation inside the door through Hannigan's satellite surveillance. Don't look back yet. The situation outside is not too tragic. You highly recommend him to watch it. Luo Guang and Ashley separated and said to Ashley, who was about to turn back. Under abnormal circumstances, I still have to shoot the chest and the head as before, but now I am in a dangerous position and have to deal with the enemies one by one, leaving enough time for these villagers who have lost their parasites to die completely. The M1903 Springfield rifle uses a magazine with a capacity of 7 rounds. At this time, all 8 magazines are placed next to the rifle. The outside is filled with special .30-06 rifle ammunition, and there is not a full box of .30-06 next to it. Rifle bullets. Wei Ang couldn't help but feel annoyed. He should have brought a backpack here, but in order to pursue heavy equipment and concealment, but Wei Ang is a rigid person. Since I don't have a backpack, I will make a backpack. The man who resembled the tyrant was the village chief, Prietos Mendez, who worshipped the leader of the dark cult just like the villagers. The surprise didn't come suddenly, but Wei Ang faced another problem at this time. I had so few bullets in my front waist pack. Caog put Dabai on the ground, touched Dabai's furry head, opened his hands and looked at Ashley. Come up, you take it? This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. In order to quickly deal with multiple enemies, Luo Guang used a relatively rough method to split the enemy and the parasites in his body in half. Woof woof, waiting for Luo Guang to give instructions. Dabai said to let it deal with it. There was only one ladder, and without Dabai guarding it, nothing happened for the time being. Ashley also joined the battle, carefully found a thing that could knock people, and assisted Dabai to get the villagers up. You know. To cross the valley to the other side, Wyan either sneaked past or killed all the way. And I looked at my position, and then looked at the broken wooden board above that was difficult to make a sound, and chose the former. It was only one floor low, and the villagers would die if they fell, but the villagers falling from below would affect the retreat at the door. By the way, a man named Louis Serra may have seen the young eagle being taken to the church. Hannigan's words reminded Wyan. Although he saw it too clearly, Wyan felt that the person who saved him was not Ada Wang. But if you saw it, how do you leave? Ashley asked obediently. After a while, all the enemies were solved by Luo Guang. The accuracy is too low. I can only see a person in a white and purple robe appear at the door and then leave. There is a way to shoot the head again. Only solving the parasites cannot release the control of the villagers. Those villagers will continue to attack Wyan until they fall. Before you and Luo Guang came there, you had been dealing with these villagers or parasites, so it is unlikely that those so-called allies also want to deal with the parasites. His blood has not yet received the holy gift. The villagers' ladders have not been chopped off by Luo Guang, so Ashley can also use the enemy's ladders to come up. Luo Guang also noticed Ashley's red face when he put her on, but I didn't expose her, and said like a piece of wood, let's go, follow you, and be careful of the bear traps under the ground. The military satellite of the lighthouse country cannot monitor the entire area at the same time, but if you want to confirm the situation on the ground, you need to zoom in and focus on the target area. Woof, Dabai's voice sounded, telling Luo Guang that no villager had found a ladder and wanted to open up the seventh road. The two crossed each other, carrying shotguns and Springfield rifles, holding pistols in both hands, and set off. Caog taught Ashley a lesson with his actions, and hugged her like a princess. Don't look at the ground, look at you. On the other side, Luo Guang was a man who could not break through the gates of the church. He eliminated the enemies who broke through one by one at the door of the church. And this man raised his hands and flew down suddenly, avoiding the attack of the village chief who broke through the glass and jumped out to chase the enemy. The village chief stared at Wei Ang's eyes and hadn't finished speaking when gunshots and glass shattering were heard from the window on one side. Wei Ang coughed, took a small breath, stood up, picked up his pistol, and looked in the direction where the village chief ran away. The gunshots rang twice more, and the village chief seemed to be enraged, and rushed towards the figure in the window with his head protected. Before the village chief drove this man away, he did not return to attack Wei Ang. In my opinion, Wei Ang, who has received the holy gift, will sooner or later become a believer of the leader, so in order to spread the Lord's gospel, I will chase this slippery enemy like a loach. From the enemy's movements, it seems that we are preventing Vulture 7 from leaving, so it is very unlikely that Vulture 7 will come into contact with the young eagle, Hannigan said along with Wyan's thoughts. Luo Guang did not find that point in the battle of the church, because for me, it was just one less knife, and the interval between Luo Guang's hitting the chest and the head was not long, so there was no broken head left for Luo Guang to find out. That was hiding from the rain, but Yan saw weapons under a table outside the shed, which should not be the gift mentioned by this ally. Before checking the things outside the shed, I pulled up a piece of rag, and then put some items that were afraid of rain and things that needed to be taken and put in it, and then used the stitches of the wound to make a simple backpack. That was to ensure that everything was packed and taken away. The gift mentioned by the mysterious ally was an M1903 Springfield rifle, which was produced since the First World War and also experienced the 7 wars. Those villagers were notified by the Sadler cult leader, because I sensed that these believers in the valley were dealt with. It was originally said that it would be more convenient for Luo Guang to free up his hands to deal with the enemy, but Luo Guang was carrying a backpack on his back. Yan on the other side also successfully dealt with the enemies in the valley and continued to retreat. So you have to slow down. He will help you check on Louis Sarah. You believe I know what happened there. The battle in the valley was also too difficult. Although the Springfield rifle in my hand had a scope and a silencer, I was at the bottom of the valley and killed the parasites in the villagers one by one. Dabai was not willing to jump up and jumped into Luo Guang's arms. Yan continued to retreat and saw a villa that was out of place with other houses in the village. Before Dabai hit the villagers, he bounced back with the reaction force, sat on the ground, and shook his head. Using psychological induction to make things clear, Luo Guang said to Ashley at the same time, "Come up." Originally, Yan was going to retreat, but I saw the light of the torches in the hands of the villagers nearby, and they were retreating towards the valley. In order to avoid encountering those enemies, I retreated outside the locked villa to avoid these villagers. Just now outside the factory, Yan discovered something that cutting the neck spinal nerves can make the enemy lose their ability to move, but it cannot start the enemy's life. The door of the church can allow at least 8 enemies to retreat at the same time. Yan thought for a while and said, "That means the other party knows your mission objectives, so they say they are your allies, indicating that what you are doing now is the same as the other party's purpose." I immediately turned around and raised my gun, but before I could shoot, I was hit by a back fist on the hand holding the gun, and the weapon in my hand was also knocked out. The villagers wanted to retreat into the church with a weak attack, and then use the advantage of numbers to surround and solve Caog, but we must first solve Caog who has not taken a step forward. Vulture number 1, what does he mean? Cao's Haifeng raised his glasses and asked. Ashley took a deep breath, and before she could do anything wrong, she jumped towards Luo Guang and was held in his arms. Of course, Luo Guang couldn't move the backpack behind his chest and carry people, but there was another reason. If he carried Ashley, there would inevitably be some contact, which Luo Guang wanted to avoid. I wanted to trigger a certain instinct in my body, and I haven't suffered a loss yet. That discovery was also a bad thing for Wei Ang, at least it couldn't save more bullets, and the price was not to pay attention to the dying guy's counterattack. Are they in trouble? Adjusting his shooting posture, Wei Ang fired the first shot. That's not the reason why this mysterious man left an M1903 Springfield rifle. Before leaving the valley, Yan confirmed the situation with Hannigan again and got a bad news, received, delayed preparations for helicopter damage. Hannigan replied, "Yes, the support troops and the Spanish army are retreating and blocking the inner area of the area. There should be a secret passage outside." Yan touched a gap with artificial traces under the cliff and said to himself, "Vulture 1 and Vulture 7 have not left the church yet, and are retreating towards the village square. The young eagle is following me." Ashley knew Luo Guang's idea. In your opinion, it was a classic scene of the prince saving the princess. After Yan finished speaking, he confirmed the route from Hannigan, hung up the communication, picked up the key and opened the double doors. Because the mechanism from the first floor to the 7th floor has not been cracked, Ashley may also take this road to the first floor. Luo Guang stepped over the remains of the villagers underground, walked a distance, and put Ashley up before leaving the churchyard and the cemetery behind. But it is certain that the parasites in the enemy's body will be eliminated while the nerves are cut, so that the enemy will gradually die before the parasites die, which means that it is not necessary to shoot the head again. Bad, dog, Ashley said in surprise, becoming a cheerleader. Bad, slow down, the weather forecast report is not bad, it may affect the helicopter to come. Hannigan asked Wyon to hurry up. The satellite has been following you, so it didn't see it. You need to readjust the focus position. Wait a minute. Hannigan immediately set the satellite to retreat. Before Wyon could follow up, this tyrant-like guy grabbed Wyon's neck and lifted him up. By the way, didn't you confirm the situation of Vulture 7? According to Hannigan, the mysterious man in white robes retreated outside the cliff and disappeared. Wyon did not try to find the mechanism of the secret passage, but just confirmed what kind of monster this mysterious man was. If he was a human, he would be bad. Without saying too much, Wyon immediately walked away. Meow, I caught a cold yesterday, and I'm still a little dizzy today, so there are a lot of typos, sorry. Long press on the phone to pop up the correction function, so I can correct the typos directly without asking the editor for permission. Thanks to everyone who corrected the typos, meow.